Every tired mind reaches a point where it no longer wants more answers. It only wants peace. Not the kind of silence that comes when the room is quiet, but the deeper silence that happens inside you. The silence that comes when your thoughts stop pulling at your heart, when your worries stop walking in circles, when your mind finally stops acting like it must solve your entire life before morning. All day, you carry things no one sees. You speak, you smile, you respond, you manage, you keep moving. You act like you are fine because the world keeps asking you to function. But when night comes, everything you pushed away begins to rise. The conversation you keep replaying, the mistake you wish you could undo, the future you keep trying to control, the person you still do not understand, the fear that tomorrow may bring more than you can handle. And slowly, your bed stops feeling like a place of rest and starts feeling like a place where every thought comes looking for you. But tonight, you are not here to fight your mind. You are not here to argue with every fear. You are not here to chase every answer, fix every wound, or carry tomorrow before it arrives. Tonight, you are here to practice something quieter, something ancient, something the Stoics understood deeply. Peace begins when you stop obeying every thought that enters your mind. The Stoics believed that the mind becomes lighter when it learns the difference between what is yours and what is not, what you can control and what you must release, what is happening now and what your fear is creating in the dark. Because most of the weight you carry at night is not life itself. It is the mind trying to control life before life has even arrived. So tonight, let this be your reset. Let your body soften, let your breathing slow, let the thoughts come without following them, let the worries speak without becoming your master. You do not have to solve your whole life tonight. You only have to return to this moment, one breath at a time. By morning, the same mind that felt crowded, loud and restless can feel quiet again. Not broken, not forced, not empty, but calm, steady, and free from the noise that once controlled it. Because when the mind finally stops fighting itself, rest becomes possible. And when rest becomes possible, a new kind of strength begins. And as you begin to let the mind soften, something becomes clear. The noise was never waiting outside you. It was waiting for quiet. It was waiting for the moment when the body stopped moving, when the hands stopped working, when the phone grew silent, when the room became still enough for everything hidden to rise. This is why rest can feel strange at first. Not because peace is impossible, but because the mind is finally being heard after spending the whole day buried under motion. There is a kind of tiredness that does not come from walking, working, or carrying physical weight. It comes from thinking without rest. It comes from living with a mind that is always checking, measuring, remembering, preparing, doubting, and protecting. During the day, this mental noise hides behind activity. You have things to do, places to be, people to answer, duties to complete. The body keeps moving, and movement gives the mind something to lean on. But when night arrives and the body finally lies still, the mind loses its distractions. Then everything that was pushed aside begins to speak. This is why the mind becomes loudest when the body finally becomes still. It is not that the night creates your thoughts. It only removes the noise that was covering them. In the daylight, the world gives your mind many doors to run through. A message arrives, a task appears, someone needs something, a problem demands attention, a sound pulls your focus, a responsibility takes your energy. But once the room becomes quiet, there is nowhere else for the mind to run. So it turns inward. It opens old drawers. It replays old words. It brings forward worries you did not have time to feel. It reminds you of what you forgot, what you fear, what you regret, and what you still cannot control. And this can feel frightening because many people mistake mental noise for truth. When a thought becomes loud, they assume it must be important. When a fear returns again and again, they assume it must be a warning. When a memory keeps repeating, they assume it must still have power over them. But the Stoics would gently remind us that not every thought deserves obedience. A thought can be loud and still be false. A fear can feel urgent and still be unnecessary. A memory can return and still not define who you are anymore. The still body exposes the restless mind, and that exposure is not punishment. It is an invitation. For most of the day, the body protects you from noticing how crowded your inner world has become. You walk, clean, cook, work, scroll, speak, plan, and respond. Every action becomes a small escape from the deeper question: what is happening inside me when nothing is demanding my attention? But at night, when the body stops performing, the mind no longer has a costume to wear. It cannot pretend it is peaceful simply because you were productive. It cannot pretend it is healed simply because you stayed busy. It cannot pretend it is calm simply because no one noticed your struggle. This is why stillness can feel uncomfortable before it becomes healing. Many people think rest should happen immediately. They lie down and expect the mind to become quiet simply because the body is horizontal. But the mind is not a machine you switch off by closing your eyes. The mind is more like water that has been shaken all day. When you finally place the glass down, the movement does not stop instantly. The water continues to swirl for a while. It takes time for the mud to settle. It takes patience before clarity returns. Your thoughts are the same. When you become still, the movement inside you may continue for some time. That does not mean you are failing. It means the mind is settling. The Stoics understood this. They did not teach people to destroy thought. They taught people to stand apart from thought. They knew that peace does not come from forcing the mind into silence. Peace comes from seeing thoughts clearly without becoming trapped inside them. Marcus Aurelius spent time examining his own mind, not because he had no worries, but because he understood that an undisciplined mind can turn even a quiet room into a prison. He knew that the real disturbance often comes not from what is happening, but from what we are telling ourselves about what is happening. When your body becomes still and your mind becomes loud, the first practice is not panic, it is observation. You notice the thought without becoming the thought. You notice the fear without bowing to it. You notice the regret without letting it drag you back into the past. You say quietly within yourself, "This is a thought. This is a memory. This is a worry. This is not my whole life." That simple separation is powerful. It creates a small space between you and the storm. And in that space, freedom begins. Because overthinking survives through closeness. It wants you to merge with every thought. It wants you to believe that because fear is present, danger must be near. It wants you to believe that because a mistake returns, you must punish yourself again. It wants you to believe that because tomorrow is uncertain, tonight must be sacrificed. But Stoicism teaches something different. It teaches that you are not required to follow every movement of the mind. You can let a thought pass through without building a home for it. You can let a worry knock without opening the door. You can let the night be quiet, even while the mind tries to make noise. The body becomes still first, because the body is easier to guide. You can lie down, you can lower your shoulders, you can relax your hands, you can breathe more slowly, you can close your eyes. These small physical choices send a message inward. They tell the mind, we are not running now. And at first, the mind may resist. It may say, but we must think about this. We must solve that. We must revisit what happened. We must prepare for everything. But you do not have to argue. You simply return to the body, return to the breath, return to the weight of yourself resting, return to what is real in this moment. This is important because the overthinking mind often lives in places where the body cannot go. The mind runs into tomorrow, but the body is here. The mind returns to yesterday, but the body is here. The mind enters conversations that are not happening, dangers that have not arrived, judgments that may never be spoken, endings that may never come. But the body remains faithful to the present. It does not live in next week. It does not live in 10 years ago. It lives now. This is why stillness, when practiced gently, can become an anchor. The body teaches the mind where peace begins. And maybe this is why the mind becomes loud in stillness, because it is not used to being brought back home. All day the mind wanders. It attaches itself to people, outcomes, mistakes, expectations, and fears. It tries to control what others think. It tries to predict what life will do. It tries to protect you from pain by thinking through every possible path, but in doing so, it exhausts you. It turns care into tension. It turns memory into punishment. It turns planning into fear. It turns silence into a stage where every hidden worry performs. But tonight, you can meet that noise differently. You do not have to hate your mind for being loud. Your mind is not your enemy. It is a tired protector that has forgotten how to rest. It has been trying to keep you safe by thinking, checking, rehearsing, and preparing. But protection without pause becomes suffering. A guard who never sleeps eventually begins to see danger everywhere. That is what overthinking does. It keeps watch for so long that even peace starts to feel suspicious. So when your body becomes still and the mind begins to speak, do not rush to silence it with force. Listen with distance. Let the noise reveal what has been asking for care. Maybe beneath the worry is a need for trust. Maybe beneath the regret is a need for forgiveness. Maybe beneath the fear of tomorrow is a tired heart asking to be held in the present. Maybe beneath the mental storm is not weakness, but exhaustion. The Stoic path is not to deny this. It is to return to what can be governed. You cannot control every thought that appears, but you can control whether you feed it. You cannot erase every memory tonight, but you can stop turning memory into a courtroom. You cannot command tomorrow to be easy, but you can refuse to suffer from it before it arrives. You cannot make the mind perfectly silent in one moment, but you can teach it, breath by breath, that stillness is safe. And this is where the night begins to change. The body lies still, the mind speaks. But you no longer chase every sentence. You no longer follow every fear to its darkest ending. You no longer treat every thought like an emergency. You remain here, breathing, resting, returning. Slowly, the mind learns that it does not need to shout to be noticed. It does not need to replay pain to be understood. It does not need to control tomorrow to survive tonight. By morning, this is how the overthinking mind begins to feel shut off. Not because you fought it into silence, but because you stopped giving your whole soul to its noise. You allowed the body to become an anchor. You allowed the breath to become a guide. You allowed stillness to reveal the storm without letting the storm become your identity. And as this lesson settles, you may begin to see that the loud mind is not a sign that peace is far away. Sometimes it is the final noise before the inner world begins to soften. Sometimes the mind becomes loudest, right before it learns how to rest. And as the mind begins to settle from its loudness, another truth quietly appears. Not every thought that sounds serious is wise. Some thoughts arrive wearing the clothing of duty. They sound mature, careful, and responsible. They say, think about this again, prepare more, check every possibility, do not relax yet. But beneath that serious voice, something else may be hiding. Not wisdom, not discipline, not true responsibility, fear. There is a kind of overthinking that does not look like panic at first. It looks like care. It looks like planning. It looks like being thoughtful. It looks like wanting to do the right thing. This is why it is so easy to obey it. The mind does not always frighten you loudly. Sometimes it speaks in a calm voice and convinces you that worrying is proof that you are a good person. It tells you that if you think long enough, you will prevent pain. If you replay every detail, you will avoid mistakes. If you prepare for every possible outcome, life will not surprise you. And because this sounds responsible, you keep feeding it. But real responsibility brings order. Fear brings pressure. That is the difference many people miss. True responsibility helps you take the next clear step. Fear keeps you trapped in endless mental movement. Responsibility says, "What can I do now?" Fear says, "What if everything goes wrong?" Responsibility leads to action. Fear leads to exhaustion. Responsibility respects your limits. Fear demands that you carry the whole future in one night. Responsibility helps you prepare with calmness. Fear makes you prepare as if peace is dangerous. This is where overthinking becomes deceptive. It does not always feel like weakness. Sometimes it feels like control. You may tell yourself, "I am just being careful." But carefulness has a stopping point. Once you have done what can reasonably be done, carefulness rests. Fear does not. Fear keeps searching. Fear keeps checking. Fear keeps opening the same door, hoping to find a new answer inside an old room. Fear never says, "That is enough for tonight." It always says, "One more thought, one more possibility, one more reason not to sleep." And slowly, the mind begins to confuse worry with love. You worry about your family and call it love. You worry about your future and call it ambition. You worry about your health and call it awareness. You worry about mistakes and call it growth. You worry about what people think and call it sensitivity. But love does not require constant torment. Ambition does not require inner punishment. Awareness does not require fear. Growth does not require endless self-attack. Sensitivity does not require surrendering your peace to every possible judgment. The Stoics understood that a person must learn to examine the motive beneath the thought. They did not ask only, "What am I thinking?" They asked, "Is this thought helping me live with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control?" Because a thought can sound useful and still weaken you. A plan can look responsible and still come from terror. A concern can seem noble and still be a chain around your mind. The question is not whether the thought is serious. The question is whether it is free. When overthinking disguises itself as responsibility, it often uses the language of protection. It says, "I am only trying to keep you safe." And maybe in some way it is. Your mind may have learned long ago that danger comes when you are not prepared. Maybe there were moments in your life when being alert protected you. Maybe you grew up needing to read moods, predict reactions, avoid mistakes, or stay ahead of problems. Maybe your nervous system learned that rest was unsafe because something always went wrong when you relaxed. So now, even when life is quiet, the mind keeps working like a guard outside a house that is no longer under attack. This is why you should not hate yourself for overthinking. It may have begun as protection, but what once protected you can later imprison you. A habit that helped you survive pressure can become the very thing that steals your peace. Fear can become so familiar that calmness feels irresponsible. Rest can feel like carelessness. Sleep can feel like giving up control. And silence can feel like danger because the mind has been trained to believe that only worry keeps life from falling apart. But the Stoic way invites you back to a stronger truth. You are not in charge of everything. This is not a hopeless thought. It is a freeing one. You are responsible for your choices, not every outcome. You are responsible for your effort, not every reaction. You are responsible for your character, not every opinion. You are responsible for your honesty, not every misunderstanding. You are responsible for what you do with this moment, not for controlling every moment that may follow. When you understand this, the false burden begins to loosen. Overthinking says, if I stop thinking, everything may collapse. Stoicism says, if something is yours to handle, handle it with calm action. If it is not yours, release it with dignity. This is not laziness. This is wisdom. Laziness avoids what must be done. Wisdom releases what cannot be controlled. There is a great difference between neglecting your duties and refusing to become a prisoner of what is beyond your power. Many people overthink because they believe uncertainty is a problem to be solved. But uncertainty is not a mistake in life. It is part of life. No one gets a future with every door already opened and every answer already explained. No one receives a guarantee that every plan will work, every person will stay, every effort will be rewarded, or every fear will prove false. The overthinking mind hates this. It wants life to sign a contract before it allows you to rest. But life does not work that way. Life gives enough light for the next step, not always the whole road. And this is where fear pretends to be responsibility again. It says, you cannot rest until you know. But peace does not come from knowing everything. Peace comes from trusting yourself to meet what comes. That is a very different kind of strength. It does not say, nothing difficult will happen. It says, if difficulty comes, I will face it with the character I am building now. This is Stoic courage, not the absence of uncertainty, but the refusal to be ruled by it. Tonight, you may notice the thoughts that try to keep you awake in the name of responsibility. A bill, a conversation, a decision, a memory, a task, a person, a fear, a question with no clear answer. And instead of following each one until your body becomes tense again, you can pause and ask, is there an action I can take tonight? If the answer is yes, take the simple action. Write it down. Send what must be sent. Prepare what must be prepared. Decide what can be decided. But if the answer is no, then continuing to worry is not responsibility. It is fear asking for more of your life. And fear is never satisfied by thinking. That is one of the most important things to understand. Fear does not become peaceful because you give it more attention. It becomes stronger. It learns that every time it appears, you will stop your life and serve it. It learns that every possible danger deserves a full meeting in your mind. It learns that your night belongs to it, but when you stop feeding it, something changes. The fear may still speak, but it loses authority. It becomes a sound, not a command, a visitor, not a ruler. The responsible mind can rest because it trusts the boundary between now and later. It knows that some things belong to tomorrow's strength, not tonight's exhaustion. It understands that a tired mind does not solve life better. It usually makes life look darker than it is. When you are drained, even small problems seem larger. Simple choices feel heavy. A single message can feel like a threat. A delayed answer can feel like rejection. A normal uncertainty can feel like disaster. This is why rest is not separate from responsibility. Rest is part of it. A rested mind sees clearly. A frightened mind multiplies shadows. So tonight, when overthinking tries to convince you that staying tense means you care, gently disagree. Caring does not mean sacrificing your peace to every possible outcome. Responsibility does not mean thinking until your body forgets how to soften. Strength does not mean refusing to sleep until every fear has been answered. Sometimes the most responsible thing you can do is stop, breathe, and allow the mind to recover enough to meet life with clarity. The Stoics would tell you to return to what is yours. Your breath is yours. Your next choice is yours. Your attitude is yours. Your honesty is yours. Your discipline is yours. Your willingness to release what cannot be held is yours, but the future is not fully yours. Other people's thoughts are not yours. The past is no longer yours to edit. The unknown is not yours to control. Once you know this, the mind no longer has to pretend that fear is duty. It can finally put down the false clipboard. It can stop managing the invisible crisis. It can stop standing guard over every possible pain. It can learn that peace is not negligence. Peace is what allows responsibility to become clean again without panic attached to it. And as the night deepens, this truth becomes softer but stronger. You do not have to prove your care by suffering. You do not have to prove your strength by staying mentally awake. You do not have to prove your responsibility by carrying what cannot be solved tonight. You can care deeply and still rest. You can be wise and still release. You can be prepared and still peaceful. By morning, the mind that once called fear responsibility can begin to know the difference, and that difference may be the beginning of freedom. And after seeing how fear can dress itself as responsibility, the next step is learning where responsibility must end for the night, because even a good mind can become cruel when it refuses to stop. Even a caring heart can become exhausted when it believes every problem must be solved before sleep. The Stoic path does not ask you to abandon your life. It asks you to stop dragging your whole life into one tired hour. There comes a point in the night when thinking is no longer helping you. It is only keeping the wound open. You may begin with one honest concern, but soon the mind pulls in everything else. One task becomes 10 fears. One memory becomes a full story. One mistake becomes proof that you are failing. One uncertain tomorrow becomes a whole future filled with shadows. And before you know it, you are not resting anymore. You are standing in the middle of your entire life, trying to fix every broken piece with a tired mind and a heavy chest. But no one was built to solve a whole life in one night. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes gentle but firm. The Stoics understood that life is not handled all at once. It is handled in the present moment, with the strength available to you now. You do not repair a lifetime by lying awake in darkness. You do not become wiser by punishing yourself with endless thoughts. You do not prepare for tomorrow by destroying the rest that tomorrow will require. A tired mind does not see clearly. It exaggerates danger. It deepens regret. It makes small things feel final. It turns uncertainty into a threat and silence into a courtroom. Ending the day without trying to solve your whole life is not weakness. It is discipline. Many people think discipline means doing more, pushing harder, staying up longer, refusing to stop until everything is complete. But there is another kind of discipline, a quieter one. The discipline of stopping when more thinking is no longer useful. The discipline of saying, "This belongs to tomorrow." The discipline of letting an unfinished life remain unfinished for one night without calling that failure. The discipline of allowing your body to rest even while some answers are still missing. This is difficult because the overthinking mind does not like open loops. It wants closure. It wants certainty. It wants every conversation understood, every fear answered, every plan secured, every pain explained. It believes peace will come only when nothing is left unresolved. But life rarely offers that kind of ending at night. Most days close with something still undone. a message not answered, a feeling not settled, a decision not clear, a worry not removed. If you wait for perfect closure before you rest, you may spend your whole life postponing peace. The Stoic practice is different. It teaches you to close the day with what is within your control, not with what is perfectly complete. You can ask yourself, did I act with as much wisdom as I had today? Did I do what I could reasonably do? Did I correct what was mine to correct? Did I learn something from what troubled me? If the answer is yes, then the day can end. Not because everything is perfect, but because your part for today has been given. And if the answer is no, even then, the night is not a place for self-destruction. It is a place for honest reflection, quiet correction, and release. You can admit where you fell short without turning your bed into a punishment room. You can recognize a mistake without becoming the mistake. You can decide to do better tomorrow without staying awake to hate yourself tonight. There is a difference between accountability and cruelty. Accountability brings you back to your values. Cruelty traps you in shame and calls it growth. The Stoics often practiced evening reflection, but their reflection was not the same as overthinking. They were not lying awake to feed anxiety. They were reviewing the day so they could live more clearly. They asked where they acted well, where they lost control, where they could improve, and what they needed to release. Then they let the day go. This is important. Reflection has an ending. Overthinking does not. Reflection gives you wisdom. Overthinking steals your peace. Reflection says, learn from this. Overthinking says, suffer from this again. So tonight, the practice is simple. Review, receive, release. Review the day gently. Do not search for every flaw like an enemy looking for weakness. Look at the day like a wise teacher. What drained you? What taught you? What tested your patience? Where did you give too much power to something outside your control? Where did you remain steady? Where did fear speak louder than truth? This is not to condemn yourself. It is to understand yourself. Then receive what the day has shown you. Maybe it showed you that you need stronger boundaries. Maybe it showed you that one situation has been taking more from you than you admit. Maybe it showed you that your mind needs quieter evenings. Maybe it showed you that some fears become stronger when you keep them hidden. Maybe it showed you that you are more tired than you have allowed yourself to say. Receive the lesson without turning it into another burden, then release the rest. Release the conversation that cannot be changed tonight. Release the person whose thoughts you cannot control. Release the outcome that has not arrived. Release the old mistake that has already taught you what it came to teach. Release the need to understand everything before you sleep. Release the belief that worry is holding your life together. It is not. Your life is not being protected by panic. It is being exhausted by it. There is deep humility in ending the day. You are admitting that you are human. You are admitting that your strength has limits. You are admitting that the world can continue turning while you rest. You are admitting that not everything depends on your constant mental effort. This humility is not defeat. It is wisdom. The person who believes they must solve everything tonight is still trapped in the illusion of total control. The person who can say, enough for today, has begun to understand peace. And maybe that is what your mind needs most tonight. Permission to stop. Not permission to give up on your dreams. Not permission to ignore your duties. Not permission to become careless with your life. But permission to stop carrying every unanswered question as if it were an emergency. Permission to stop turning every future possibility into tonight's suffering. Permission to place the day down, even if it is not perfectly wrapped and explained. Permission to be a person, not a machine. permission to rest before you fully understand how everything will work out. Because morning has its own strength. Morning brings a different light. Problems that feel huge at midnight often become smaller after rest. Thoughts that feel urgent in darkness often lose their force when the body has slept. Decisions that feel impossible at night often become clearer when the nervous system has softened. This is why sleep is not an escape from responsibility. It is one of the ways responsibility becomes possible again. You cannot meet tomorrow wisely if you drag yourself into it broken by tonight's mental battles. You cannot offer patience when you have spent the night fighting shadows. You cannot make calm choices when you have trained your mind to treat every silence as danger. The Stoic does not worship exhaustion. The Stoic respects nature, and nature asks for rhythm, effort and rest, action and stillness, reflection and release. So as this night deepens, you can practice ending the day like a Stoic. Not with denial, but with clarity. You can say, "This day has given me what it had to give. I have done what I could with the strength I had. What remains unsolved does not need my suffering tonight. What is mine will meet me tomorrow. What is not mine can pass without my grip." Let those words settle slowly. You do not have to solve your childhood tonight. You do not have to repair every relationship tonight. You do not have to know where your whole life is going tonight. You do not have to become completely healed before you deserve rest. You do not have to earn sleep by fixing everything first. Rest is not a reward for a perfect day. Rest is the ground that allows you to rise again. And by ending the day without trying to solve your whole life, you teach the mind something powerful. You teach it that peace is allowed before everything is finished. You teach it that silence is safe. You teach it that the future does not need to be conquered in the dark. You teach it that some burdens can wait, some answers can unfold, and some healing happens only after the mind stops forcing itself to understand. By morning, the mind that wanted to carry everything may feel lighter because it finally learned where today ends. And when the mind learns where today ends, tomorrow no longer has to begin with exhaustion. And after learning how to end the day without trying to solve your whole life, another hidden doorway opens. Because even when you decide to rest, the night may still try to convince you that its thoughts are more real than everything you knew in the daylight. A small fear becomes a heavy warning. A simple memory becomes a sentence against you. A quiet doubt becomes louder than all the proof that you are still standing. This is where the mind must be gently taught that darkness can make thoughts feel powerful, but feeling powerful does not make them true. Night has a strange way of changing the size of things. What looked manageable in the afternoon can feel unbearable at midnight. What seemed like a small delay earlier can begin to feel like rejection. What was only an unfinished task can start to feel like personal failure. A word someone said, a message they did not send, a mistake from years ago, a bill waiting for attention, a pain in the body, a plan not yet complete. All of it can grow larger when the world becomes quiet. This does not happen because night knows more than day. It happens because the tired mind becomes easier to convince. During the day, truth has witnesses. You see movement, you hear voices, you speak to people, you complete tasks. You notice evidence that life is still moving forward. You may feel worried, but the world keeps giving you reminders that not everything is falling apart. There is sunlight, sound, routine, responsibility, and motion. These things help your mind stay connected to what is real. But at night, when those outer anchors disappear, the mind can begin creating its own world. And if the mind is tired, that world can become darker than reality. This is why nighttime thoughts often feel stronger than daytime truth. They are not stronger because they are wiser. They are stronger because they arrive when your defenses are low. The body is tired. The nervous system is worn. The heart is softer. The room is quiet. There are fewer distractions to challenge the fear, so the thought does not have to prove itself. It only has to appear, and because it appears in silence, it feels important. But the Stoic path asks you to slow down before you believe what the night is saying. A thought that arrives when you are exhausted should not be given the same authority as a truth that remains steady in the light. This does not mean you ignore your feelings. It means you examine them with patience. The Stoics were not against emotion. They were against being ruled by impressions before reason had time to speak. They understood that the first appearance of a thing is not always the truth of a thing. The mind may say, "This is terrible," but wisdom asks, "Is it truly terrible, or does it only feel terrible right now?" The mind may say, "I cannot handle this," but wisdom asks, "Is that true, or am I tired?" The mind may say, "Everything is going wrong," but wisdom asks, "Everything, or only one part of life that feels heavy tonight?" That small pause can save you from believing a storm. Nighttime thoughts often gain power because they speak in absolutes. They use words like always, never, nothing, everything, no one, forever. Nothing is working. I always ruin things. No one understands me. This will never change. Everything is too late. These words are heavy because they make pain sound final. But life is rarely as absolute as fear makes it sound. Most situations are not everything. Most mistakes are not forever. Most delays are not rejection. Most hard nights are not life sentences. They are moments, not verdicts. The tired mind forgets this. When the body needs rest, the mind can lose its ability to measure things clearly. It starts placing the whole weight of life on one thought. A small problem becomes a prophecy. A single feeling becomes an identity. A passing fear becomes a future. And because the night is quiet, there is nothing outside to interrupt the story. So the mind keeps speaking, and the more it speaks, the more believable it becomes. This is why Stoicism teaches the discipline of testing your impressions. An impression is the first thing your mind says about something. Someone is quiet, and the impression says, "They are angry with me." A plan changes, and the impression says, "I am losing control." You remember a mistake, and the impression says, "I am still that person." The Stoic does not immediately obey these impressions. The Stoic holds them up to the light and asks, "What do I actually know?" This question is powerful at night. What do I actually know? Not what do I fear? Not what do I assume? Not what is my tired mind predicting? Not what old pain is suggesting? What do I actually know? Maybe you know that one person has not replied yet. That is all. You do not know that they no longer care. Maybe you know that tomorrow has responsibilities. That is all. You do not know that you will fail. Maybe you know that you made a mistake in the past. That is all. You do not know that your whole future is ruined. Maybe you know that you feel afraid tonight. That is all. You do not know that danger is truly here. The night becomes less powerful when you separate facts from fear. This does not make every problem disappear. Stoicism is not pretending life is easy. It is refusing to make life harder by adding invented suffering to real difficulty. A real problem may need attention tomorrow. A real decision may need courage. A real wound may need care. But tonight, the question is whether thinking about it in circles is helping you, or whether it is only making the dark feel darker. Many nighttime thoughts are not asking for solutions. They are asking for reassurance. They want you to keep touching the wound to prove you care. They want you to keep revisiting the fear to prove you are prepared. They want you to keep replaying the memory to prove you have learned. But some lessons do not become deeper through repetition. They become heavier. Some memories do not need another trial. They need release. Some fears do not need more attention. They need boundaries. And one of the deepest boundaries you can practice tonight is this: I will not make permanent conclusions from temporary exhaustion. That sentence can become a shield for the mind. You do not decide your worth at midnight. You do not judge your whole future while your body is begging for sleep. You do not measure your life by the thoughts that appear when you are drained. You do not let darkness become your teacher when clarity has not yet returned. You wait, you breathe, you let morning have its say. Because morning often tells the truth more gently. Morning brings light back to the room. The body has more strength. The mind has more space. The same thought that felt like a giant at night may look smaller after rest. The same fear that felt urgent may become something you can handle step by step. The same memory that felt painful may lose its sharpness when you are no longer alone with it in the dark. Nothing magical had to happen. Your state changed, and because your state changed, your judgment became clearer. This is why rest is part of wisdom. A person who refuses to rest may call themselves strong, but they may only be giving fear more hours to speak. A person who rests is not avoiding truth. They are choosing to meet truth with a clearer mind. The Stoic does not worship struggle for its own sake. The Stoic values right judgment, and right judgment becomes difficult when the body is tired, the mind is tense, and the night has turned every shadow into a sign. So when nighttime thoughts begin to feel powerful, do not attack them. Do not panic because they arrived. Do not shame yourself for feeling afraid. Simply remember that power is not the same as truth. A thunderstorm is loud, but it does not last forever. A shadow can look large on the wall, but it is not the object itself. A thought can shake your chest, but it is still only a thought until wisdom agrees with it. Let the night say what it wants. You do not have to answer everything it says. You can let a fear pass without naming it prophecy. You can let a memory rise without calling it identity. You can let a worry knock without turning the whole house over to it. You can feel the heaviness and still say, "This is not the final truth. This is my tired mind speaking in the dark." And slowly, the spell begins to break. The thought that felt so powerful begins to lose its command. The fear that seemed so certain begins to soften. The memory that wanted to pull you backward begins to fade into the background, not because you forced it away, but because you stopped bowing to it. You return to the body, you return to breath, you return to what is known, what is present, what is yours. Tonight, the practice is not to believe every dark sentence the mind writes. The practice is to wait for clarity, to give truth more time than fear, to let the body rest before making meaning out of exhaustion, to remember that the night can make thoughts louder, but it cannot make them wiser unless you hand it that power. By morning, the thoughts that felt so heavy may no longer look like truth. They may look like what they were all along, tired waves passing through a tired mind. And once you see them that way, you do not have to drown in them. You can let them pass. You can rest. You can allow the daylight to remind you that not every thought born in darkness deserves to lead your life. And once you begin to see that nighttime thoughts are not always truth, the next lesson becomes even more freeing. Not every thought needs your movement. Not every fear needs your obedience. Not every memory needs your return. Not every mental alarm means something is actually burning. Sometimes the mind speaks, not because it is wise, but because it is restless. Sometimes it gives orders, not because you must follow them, but because it has never been taught that you are allowed to pause. There is a quiet prison many people live inside without noticing it. A thought appears, and immediately they obey. The mind says, check again, so they check. It says, replay what happened, so they replay. It says, worry about tomorrow, so they worry. It says, you should feel guilty, so they lower their head. It says, something bad may happen, so their body tightens as if danger is already at the door. And because this has happened for years, they begin to believe thoughts are instructions instead of events passing through awareness. But a thought is not a command. A thought is only an arrival. It can arrive suddenly. It can arrive loudly. It can arrive with emotion attached to it. It can feel convincing. It can even feel familiar enough to seem like your own deepest truth. But still, it is not a law. It is not a master. It is not a sentence written over your life. The Stoics understood this with great clarity. They knew that the first movement of the mind is not always within your control. A thought may appear before you choose it. A fear may rise before you invite it. A memory may return before you are ready. But what happens next is where your freedom begins. You may not control the knock at the door, but you can decide whether to open it. This is one of the most powerful Stoic practices for an overthinking mind, to create space between the thought and your response. Most suffering grows in the absence of that space. When there is no pause, the mind becomes a ruler. A worry appears and you follow it for an hour. A regret appears and you punish yourself again. A suspicion appears and you start building a story. A fear appears and you treat it as prophecy. But when you pause, even for one breath, the chain weakens. You stop being dragged. You begin to observe. And observation changes everything. When you observe a thought, you are no longer swallowed by it. You can say, a fearful thought is here. That is different from saying, I am in danger. You can say, a memory is here. That is different from saying, I am back in that moment. You can say, a guilty thought is here. That is different from saying, I am guilty forever. This simple shift may seem small, but it teaches the mind a new order. It tells the inner world, you may speak, but you do not rule. Overthinking depends on instant obedience. It wants speed. It wants you to react before wisdom arrives. It wants you to answer the thought before you have examined it. That is why the pause is so important. The pause is not empty. The pause is power. In that pause you remember your values. You remember what is real. You remember what belongs to you and what does not. You remember that fear can visit without becoming your guide. Many thoughts lose strength when they are not immediately served. A thought may say, you need to solve this now. But you can answer calmly, not everything is solved at night. A thought may say, you made a terrible mistake. You can answer, I can learn without attacking myself. A thought may say, they must be upset with you. You can answer, I do not know that. I will not build a prison from an assumption. A thought may say, tomorrow will be too much. You can answer, tomorrow will be met one step at a time, not suffered twice in advance. This is not arguing with the mind in a tense way. It is correcting it gently, like speaking to a frightened child. Because often, that is what overthinking is. A frightened part of you trying to feel safe by controlling everything. It believes that if it keeps shouting, you will be protected. It believes that if it keeps warning you, you will never be hurt. It believes that if it keeps pulling you into the future, it can prevent surprise. But life cannot be fully controlled by thought, and the mind that tries to control everything eventually becomes tired of its own alarms. The Stoic does not silence the mind with force. The Stoic trains the mind with judgment. Judgment means you do not accept every inner voice as wise. You test it. You ask, is this useful? You ask, is this within my control? You ask, is this helping me act with courage? patience and clarity. You ask, is this thought asking for action or only asking for more fear? These questions bring the mind back from blind obedience. They remind you that you are not a servant to every passing mental storm. There are thoughts that deserve attention. A thought that reminds you to apologize may be useful. A thought that helps you prepare wisely may be useful. A thought that shows you a boundary you need to set may be useful. Stoicism is not about ignoring the mind. It is about refusing to worship it. The goal is not to become empty of thought. The goal is to become free from unnecessary obedience. Because some thoughts are messengers and some are only noise. A useful thought leads to a clear next step. It brings a kind of grounded energy. It may be serious, but it does not destroy your peace. It says, here is what must be done. Then it allows you to do it. But a fear-based thought keeps circling. It does not lead to action. It leads to more thinking. It asks for your attention, then gives you no peace in return. It does not guide you. It drains you. It does not solve. It multiplies. This difference matters deeply at night. When your body is tired, the mind may try to turn every thought into an emergency. But before you obey, you can ask one quiet question. What is this thought asking me to do? If it asks you to take one simple, healthy action, take it. Write a note for tomorrow. Set a reminder. Drink water. Say a short prayer. Breathe deeply. Close the open loop in a gentle way. But if the thought only asks you to suffer, rehearse, panic, accuse yourself, or predict disaster, then it is not a command. It is mental noise looking for authority. You do not have to give it authority. This is where freedom becomes practical. You may not feel calm immediately. The thought may still be there. The fear may still knock. The memory may still move through your chest. But you can refuse the behavior it demands. You can refuse to pick up the phone and search for reassurance for the 10th time. You can refuse to replay the same conversation again. You can refuse to check what you already checked. You can refuse to turn a tired thought into a life decision. You can refuse to punish yourself just because guilt asked you to. At first, this may feel unnatural. The mind is used to being obeyed quickly. When you stop obeying, it may become louder for a while. It may say, "This is dangerous. You are being careless. You must think about this." But this is only the old habit trying to survive. Stay gentle. Stay steady. Return to the breath. Return to the body. Return to the present room. Let the thought exist without becoming its worker. A thought can be present while you remain still. That is a powerful thing to learn. Many people believe they must remove a thought before they can rest. But sometimes rest begins when you stop negotiating with the thought. It may remain in the background, but you no longer bow to it. It may speak, but you no longer answer every sentence. It may pull, but you no longer follow. This is how the mind learns that not every signal receives action. This is how the nervous system learns that silence is not danger. This is how overthinking begins to lose its throne. The body can help you practice this. When a thought gives a command, soften something physically before you respond. Relax your jaw, lower your shoulders, open your hands, let your tongue rest. Take one slow breath. These small movements tell the mind, we are not under attack. They interrupt the automatic chain between thought and obedience. They bring you back to the one place fear keeps trying to pull you away from. Now. Now is where choice lives. Not yesterday. Yesterday can teach, but it cannot be edited. Not tomorrow. Tomorrow can be prepared for, but it cannot be controlled from bed. Choice lives now, in the small space between a thought and your response. That space may be only a breath at first, but it is enough. Enough to stop one spiral. Enough to question one fear. Enough to release one command. Enough to remind yourself that your mind can produce noise without your soul becoming its servant. And as the night grows deeper, this practice becomes softer. You do not need to fight every thought. You only need to stop treating it like a king. Let it pass through the room of your awareness. Let it speak without taking the chair at the center. Let it rise and fall like weather. You are not the weather. You are the one noticing it. By morning, the mind begins to feel quieter, not because thoughts never came, but because you stopped marching behind each one. You stopped turning every fear into an order. You stopped letting every memory pull you back into old pain. You stopped giving every mental alarm the power to control your body. And in that new stillness, you begin to understand something life-changing. Peace is not the absence of thought. Peace is the freedom to let thoughts pass without becoming their prisoner. And after learning that every thought is not a command, the next practice becomes even quieter. You do not have to live tomorrow before it comes. You do not have to sit in the dark rehearsing conversations, dangers, disappointments, and decisions that have not yet arrived. The mind may call this preparation, but often it is only fear dressed in future clothing. Tonight, your work is not to visit tomorrow early. Your work is to let tomorrow come in its own time. There is a deep exhaustion that comes from living ahead of yourself. The body lies in bed, but the mind has already left the room. It is in tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, next week, next month, next year. It is standing in places you have not reached, answering questions no one has asked yet, defending yourself against judgments that may never come, solving problems that may not even exist when the sun rises. And because the mind can travel faster than the body, it begins to believe that the future is already happening, but it is not. Tomorrow is not here yet. It has not spoken. It has not shown its weather. It has not revealed its people, its demands, its help, its surprises, or its mercy. Yet the overthinking mind tries to drag tomorrow into tonight and force you to face it while you are tired. This is why anxiety can feel so heavy at night. You are not only carrying the present moment, you are carrying a future that has not arrived, with a strength that belongs to a body asking for rest. The Stoics understood the danger of suffering ahead of time. Seneca wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. In simple words, the mind can make you live through pain that life has not even given you. You may suffer a conversation before it happens. You may suffer a loss before it comes. You may suffer failure before you have even tried. You may suffer rejection before anyone has turned away. And by the time tomorrow actually arrives, you are already tired from fighting a battle that existed mostly in thought. This does not mean you should never prepare. Preparation is wise when it is clear, limited, and useful. If something must be done, do it. Write the note, set the alarm, arrange what needs arranging, make the simple plan. But after preparation has done its honest work, rehearsal becomes a thief. It steals the peace that preparation was meant to protect. It keeps returning to the same scene, changing words, predicting reactions, testing outcomes, and pretending that enough mental repetition will finally create safety. But no amount of nighttime rehearsal can make tomorrow fully obey you. That truth can feel uncomfortable, but it is also freeing. You cannot control every mood you will meet tomorrow. You cannot control every delay, every message, every response, every result, every mistake, every silence, every unexpected change. You can control your character. You can control your effort. You can control whether you meet the next moment with patience or panic. You can control whether you speak with honesty, act with discipline, and return to yourself when fear begins to rise. That is enough for tonight. The quiet discipline is learning to stop at enough. Overthinking never believes in enough. It wants one more rehearsal, one more possible answer, one more future scene, one more reason to stay awake. It says, "What if this happens?" And when you answer that, it says, "But what if something worse happens?" And if you answer that, it creates another road, another shadow, another version of the future where you must defend yourself again. This is how the mind becomes a theater and fear becomes the director. It keeps putting tomorrow on stage and forcing you to watch the same painful play again and again. But you are allowed to leave the theater. You are allowed to say, "This scene is not happening now." You are allowed to say, "If tomorrow requires strength, I will meet it tomorrow." You are allowed to say, "I do not need to rehearse pain in order to prove I am prepared." These words may not erase every thought immediately, but they begin to change your relationship with the future. You stop treating tomorrow like an enemy hiding behind the door. You start treating it like a road that will reveal itself one step at a time. There is humility in this. The anxious mind wants to be certain before it rests. The Stoic mind learns to rest without certainty, not because it is careless, but because it understands the limits of human control. You are not the ruler of the sunrise. You are not the author of every outcome. You are not responsible for making life painless before you allow yourself to sleep. You are responsible for meeting life with the best mind you can carry, and that mind becomes better when it is rested. Many people think they are protecting tomorrow by thinking about it all night, but they are actually weakening the very person who must live through it. If you spend the night rehearsing every difficulty, you enter the morning already burdened. Your patience becomes thinner. Your judgment becomes darker. Your body feels heavier. Your emotions sit closer to the surface. A small problem can feel larger because you have already been fighting it for hours in your mind. This is why rest is not separate from courage. Rest feeds courage. Rest gives tomorrow a clearer version of you. Rest allows the mind to meet reality as it is, not as fear painted it at midnight. When you sleep, you are not abandoning your future. You are preparing your nervous system to stand inside it with more balance. So tonight, when tomorrow begins calling too early, let the body answer first. Feel where you are. Feel the bed beneath you. Feel the air moving in and out. Feel the weight of your hands. Feel the quiet room holding you. The future may be loud in the mind, but the body is still here. This moment is still here, and this moment is the only place where peace can be practiced. Tomorrow may need your action, but tonight needs your release. That sentence is worth keeping close. Tomorrow may need your voice. Tonight needs your silence. Tomorrow may need your decision. Tonight needs your breath. Tomorrow may need your effort. Tonight needs your surrender. Tomorrow may ask you to stand, speak, work, correct, continue, or begin again. But tonight is asking you to stop rehearsing long enough to be restored. The overthinking mind may say, "If I stop rehearsing, I will not be ready." But readiness is not built by exhaustion. Readiness is built by clarity, and clarity comes when the mind is allowed to settle. Think of a path covered in dust. If you keep running across it in panic, the dust never settles, and you cannot see the ground. But when you become still, the air clears. The path appears. You may not see the whole road, but you can see the next step. That is all tomorrow usually requires. Not the whole map, not every answer, not total certainty, just the next right step taken with a steadier heart. The Stoics did not ask life to become predictable before they practiced peace. They trained themselves to meet unpredictability without surrendering their inner command. This is the heart of the practice, not controlling tomorrow, but refusing to let tomorrow control tonight. And when a future thought rises again, do not hate it. Do not fight it like an enemy. Simply name it. This is rehearsal. That naming creates distance. It reminds you that the thought is not reality. It is practice for a situation that may change, soften, disappear, or arrive differently than expected. Then return to the breath. Return to the present. Return to the quiet fact that nothing more can be done right now except rest. Some of the things you fear tomorrow may never happen. Some may happen, but not as badly as the mind predicted. Some may happen and still meet a stronger version of you than fear expected. But none of them need your suffering tonight. Pain does not become easier because you taste it early. Responsibility does not become deeper because you lose sleep over it. Love does not become more real because you worry without stopping. Strength does not grow by rehearsing disaster. Strength grows when you learn where to place your attention. Tonight, place it here, not in the meeting, not in the message, not in the mistake, not in the possible disappointment, not in the future room where fear keeps asking you to stand trial. Place it in the breath. Place it in the body. Place it in the simple truth that tomorrow has not arrived. And because it has not arrived, you do not have to live inside it yet. Let tomorrow come with the morning. Let it knock only when the sun has given you more strength. Let it bring what it brings, and trust that you will meet it when meeting is required. You have survived many days you once feared. You have walked through mornings that your nighttime mind made impossible. You have carried more than you thought you could, and still, here you are, breathing. So tonight, release the rehearsal. Stop answering questions the future has not asked. Stop defending yourself in conversations that are not happening. Stop building pain out of possibilities. The discipline is quiet, but it is powerful. Let tomorrow arrive without dragging it into your bed. By morning, your mind may feel lighter, not because the future has been solved, but because it was finally allowed to remain in the future. And when tomorrow comes, you will meet it from rest, not from fear. And after learning to let tomorrow arrive without rehearsing it tonight, another layer of the overthinking mind becomes visible. Because sometimes the mind does not say, "I am afraid." It says, "I am preparing." It does not say, "I do not feel safe." It says, "I just need to think this through one more time." It does not admit that it is searching for control. It calls itself wise, careful, mature, and responsible. But beneath all that mental movement, the heart may only be asking one quiet question: can I be protected from pain? This is how overthinking confuses preparation with protection. Preparation is useful. Preparation has a purpose. It helps you take a real step in the real world. You prepare a meal because the body needs food. You prepare for a meeting because your words need order. You prepare for a journey because you need direction. You prepare for a difficult conversation because you want to speak with honesty instead of anger. Preparation is calm enough to know when it has done its part, but overthinking does not know when to stop. Overthinking keeps returning to the same issue long after preparation has ended. It checks what has already been checked. It rehearses what has already been rehearsed. It asks questions that have no answer tonight. It searches for certainty where life only offers possibility. It keeps going, not because there is more useful work to do, but because the mind believes that if it thinks hard enough, it can build a wall between you and suffering. But no wall made of thought can protect you from life. This can be hard to accept because the overthinking mind often begins with good intentions. It wants to keep you safe. It wants to prevent embarrassment. It wants to avoid rejection. It wants to escape regret. It wants to make sure you are not caught unprepared. It wants to protect your peace, your future, your relationships, your name, your body, your heart. But because fear is leading the process, the protection becomes punishment. The mind becomes a guard that never sleeps, standing at the gate of every possible danger until even silence begins to look suspicious. The Stoics would tell us that this is where the mind loses its natural order. It takes a useful tool, preparation, and turns it into a prison. It forgets that human beings are meant to act with reason, then release what reason cannot control. It forgets that wisdom does not mean predicting every wound before it happens. Wisdom means building the character to meet life when it arrives. The overthinking mind says, "If I prepare for every bad thing, I will not be hurt." But life does not promise that. You can prepare and still be surprised. You can plan and still face change. You can be kind and still be misunderstood. You can be careful and still make mistakes. You can love deeply and still experience loss. You can do everything correctly and still meet things you did not choose. This is not a reason to despair. It is a reason to stop asking the mind to perform a task it was never built to complete. The mind can guide you. It cannot make you untouchable. There is a painful exhaustion that comes from trying to become untouchable. You start thinking through every conversation before it happens. You study people's moods before they speak. You prepare explanations for accusations no one has made. You predict disappointment so it will not shock you. You expect abandonment so it will not destroy you. You plan your emotional defense before anyone has attacked. And because all this looks like caution, you may not notice that you are living as though danger is already present. This is not preparation. This is the body being taught to fear peace. True preparation gives the body a sense of steadiness. It says, "I have done what I can." False protection gives the body tension. It says, "Do not relax yet." True preparation has an ending. False protection always demands more. True preparation helps you move forward. False protection keeps you circling in place. True preparation belongs to wisdom. False protection belongs to fear. And tonight you can begin to know the difference. Ask yourself gently, is this thought helping me take a clear step, or is it only making me feel less safe? That question matters, because many thoughts pretend to be useful while secretly increasing fear. A useful thought may remind you to write something down, make a simple plan, apologize, set a boundary, or prepare what can actually be prepared. But a fear-based thought only keeps opening more doors. It says, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if they think this? What if tomorrow becomes too much? What if you fail? What if you cannot recover? And each question makes the mind feel busier while the soul feels less protected. This is the trap. The more you overthink, the more protected you expect to feel. But often, the more you overthink, the less safe you become inside yourself. The mind begins to see danger everywhere because it has spent so much time searching for danger. It becomes like a person staring into the dark for so long that every shadow looks alive. Soon, peace feels careless, stillness feels risky, sleep feels like letting your guard down, and rest becomes something the mind believes you must earn after every possible threat has been examined. But rest is not earned by solving every danger. Rest is part of how you become strong enough to face what is real. The Stoic does not prepare by panicking. The Stoic prepares by returning to what is within control. What can I do now? What can I improve? What can I write down and leave for morning? What attitude can I choose? What fear must I stop feeding? What duty has truly been placed in my hands, and what burden have I picked up from imagination? These questions do not create a perfect life, but they create an ordered mind. And an ordered mind is more useful than a mind crowded with rehearsed disasters. Sometimes, overthinking becomes a way of trying to feel powerful when life feels uncertain. If you cannot control the outcome, you try to control the picture of the outcome in your head. If you cannot control another person, you try to predict every version of their reaction. If you cannot control tomorrow, you try to live through it early so it cannot surprise you. But this kind of control is only emotional debt. You pay for pain before you even know whether it will arrive. And some of the pain never arrives. Some conversations go better than expected. Some feared outcomes soften. Some people understand. Some doors open differently. Some problems become smaller with time. Some answers appear only after rest. But the overthinking mind does not wait long enough to discover this. It suffers in advance and then calls that suffering preparation. Tonight, let that pattern be interrupted. You do not need to think through every possible tomorrow to prove you are wise. You do not need to rehearse every loss to prove you are strong. You do not need to prepare for every rejection to protect your heart. You do not need to keep your nervous system awake as an offering to responsibility. You are allowed to prepare simply, then stop. You are allowed to say, "This is enough for now." You are allowed to leave some things unanswered until morning. This is not careless. It is deeply disciplined. Because the undisciplined mind does not only act wildly, sometimes it thinks wildly. It runs ahead. It multiplies fears. It calls panic planning. It calls tension loyalty. It calls worry love. The disciplined mind learns how to stop. It learns how to say, "I have made the plan. I have done the part that belongs to me. The rest is not mine to control tonight." That is a quiet form of strength many people never learn. The body needs this message. It needs to know that it does not have to remain braced against every possible blow. It needs to know that not every silence is danger. Not every unknown is a threat. Not every tomorrow is an enemy. Not every lack of certainty requires a full night of mental labor. The body needs to feel that you can be aware without being tense, prepared without being afraid, responsible without being restless. So as the night deepens, let the mind place its tools down. Let preparation end where usefulness ends. Let protection return to its true form, not panic, not control, not endless mental rehearsal, but trust in your ability to meet life one moment at a time. Because the truth is, you are not protected by thinking about everything that could hurt you. You are protected by the character you build, the wisdom you practice, the boundaries you honor, the rest you allow, and the steady courage that returns when the mind is no longer exhausted by invisible battles. By morning, you may not have controlled everything, but you may have done something far more powerful. You may have stopped teaching your mind that fear is the only way to feel safe. And once the mind learns that preparation can end, peace can finally begin. And after understanding that preparation can quietly turn into fear, the next step is learning how to sort the mind with honesty. Because not everything that feels urgent is real. Not everything that appears in thought is a problem. Not every worry deserves a meeting. The overthinking mind mixes everything together until a simple concern becomes a storm, and a passing thought begins to feel like a command from life itself. Stoicism teaches you to slow down, separate what is real from what is imagined, and stop giving mental noise the same respect as truth. There is a great difference between a real problem and mental noise. A real problem has shape. It has facts. It has something you can name clearly. It may be uncomfortable, but it is connected to reality. A bill that must be paid is a real problem. A conversation that must happen is a real problem. A task that needs attention is a real problem. A health sign that needs care is a real problem. A promise you made and must honor is a real problem. These things may require courage, planning, patience, or action. But they are real because they exist outside the mind's endless guessing. Mental noise is different. Mental noise has no clear form. It keeps changing. It begins with, what if? What if they hate me? What if tomorrow goes wrong? What if I fail? What if I never recover? What if I made the wrong choice? What if something bad is coming? The more you answer it, the more questions it creates. It does not lead you to one clear action. It leads you into a maze. And the cruel part is that the maze feels important while you are inside it. This is why the Stoic practice of separation is so powerful. The Stoics believed that peace begins when you divide life into two parts, what is within your control and what is not. This sounds simple, but when practiced deeply, it can change the way the mind works at night. When a thought rises, you do not immediately obey it. You place it gently in front of you and ask, is this mine to act on, or is this only noise asking for attention? That one question can break the spell of overthinking. A real problem usually asks for action. Mental noise asks for suffering. That is one of the clearest ways to tell the difference. A real problem may say, send the message tomorrow. Write down the appointment. Apologize when you have the chance. Make a plan. Ask for help. Set a boundary. It points towards something practical, even if the action is small. Mental noise does not do this. It says, keep thinking, keep fearing, keep replaying, keep checking, keep punishing yourself. It drains your strength but gives you no direction. And because mental noise often wears the face of concern, you may not recognize it at first. It may sound responsible, it may sound careful, it may sound wise, but look at what it produces inside you. Does it make you clearer or more confused? Does it help you move or does it freeze you? Does it bring one honest step or does it create 10 new fears? Does it return you to the present or does it drag you into a future that has not arrived? The Stoic mind is trained to notice this difference. When a thought appears at night, you can ask, what are the facts? Not the fear, not the story, not the old wound speaking through the present situation. The facts. Maybe the fact is that someone has not replied. The noise says, they are angry, they are leaving, you did something wrong. But the fact is only that a message has not been answered yet. Maybe the fact is that you have a responsibility tomorrow. The noise says, you will fail. It will be too much. You are not ready. But the fact is only that tomorrow has a task. Maybe the fact is that you made a mistake. The noise says, this proves who you are. But the fact is only that a mistake happened, and mistakes can be corrected, learned from, or carried with more wisdom. Facts are usually smaller than fear. Fear adds decoration. Fear adds prediction. Fear adds old pain. Fear adds shame. Fear adds final words like always, never, everything and nothing. It takes one fact and builds a whole dark world around it. Stoicism teaches you to remove the extra weight, to return to what is actually here, to say, this is what happened, this is what I can do, this is what I cannot control, this is what I must release. That process may feel simple, but it is not shallow. It is mental freedom. Because much of overthinking comes from treating every inner sentence as if it deserves full investigation. The mind says, what if your life never changes? And you follow it. The mind says, what if they secretly judge you? And you follow it. The mind says, what if tomorrow breaks you? And you follow it. Soon, you have spent an hour walking behind thoughts that had no evidence, no wisdom, and no right to lead you. But tonight, you can practice not following. You can let the thought appear and say, is this a real problem or mental noise? If it is a real problem, bring it down to one next step. Not 10 steps, not a lifetime plan. One step. If there is nothing you can do tonight, write it down for tomorrow and release it. That is responsibility. That is order. That is wisdom. But if it is mental noise, do not feed it with more thinking. Do not argue with it for hours. Do not try to solve a fear that keeps changing its shape. Name it for what it is. noise. There is peace in naming things correctly. When you call fear truth, it controls you. When you call mental noise responsibility, it exhausts you. When you call anxiety intuition, it misleads you. But when you call noise, something loosens. You stop bowing to it. You stop building your night around it. You stop letting it decide how much rest you deserve. The Stoics were serious about this because they knew the mind can suffer from judgments more than events. A situation happens once, but the mind can repeat it 100 times. A person says one sentence, but the mind can turn it into a full trial. A future event is still far away, but the mind can make you live through it every night before it comes. This is not life hurting you again and again. This is the mind adding pain through interpretation. And interpretation can be trained. You can train yourself to see a delay as a delay, not abandonment. You can train yourself to see a mistake as a lesson, not an identity. You can train yourself to see uncertainty as part of life, not proof that danger is near. You can train yourself to see silence as silence, not punishment. You can train yourself to see tomorrow as tomorrow, not tonight's enemy. This is not easy at first, because the old mind will want to return to its old habits. It will want to mix everything together again. It will want to turn facts into fears, and fears into commands. But each time you separate real problems from mental noise, you strengthen your inner judgment. You become less available to chaos. You become less easily pulled into stories that have no ground. You become more loyal to reality than to panic. And this loyalty to reality is one of the deepest forms of peace. Not because reality is always easy. Sometimes reality is hard. Sometimes there are real duties, real losses, real conversations, real changes, real responsibilities. But reality can be faced. Mental noise cannot be satisfied. Reality gives you something to meet. Noise gives you something to chase. Reality asks for courage. Noise asks for endless fear. Reality can be handled step by step. Noise keeps moving the finish line. So tonight, do not ask, how do I solve every thought? Ask, which thoughts are asking for wise action and which thoughts are only asking for my peace? This question will protect your mind from wasting its strength. It will teach you that not every inner alarm is a fire. Not every worry is wisdom. Not every fear is a message from truth. If there is a real problem, you will meet it with one calm step. If there is mental noise, you will let it pass like wind outside a closed window. You may hear it, but you do not have to open the door. You may notice it, but you do not have to follow it into the dark. By morning, the mind begins to feel quieter because it no longer has permission to turn every shadow into a crisis. It has learned to sort, to test, to separate, to return. And once you can separate real problems from mental noise, you stop living as a servant to every thought. You become the one who decides what deserves your energy, what deserves action, and what must be left outside the gates of your peace. And after learning to separate real problems from mental noise, the next step is even more peaceful. Stop debating with thoughts that have brought no proof. Because the overthinking mind does not always need facts to disturb you. Sometimes it only needs a possibility, a shadow, a silence, a delay, a look, a memory, a small change in someone's tone. And suddenly, the mind begins building a whole story around something that has not been proven. Tonight, the practice is to stop entering arguments with thoughts that have no evidence. There is a certain kind of thought that comes quietly at first. It does not arrive with truth. It arrives with suspicion. It says, maybe something is wrong. Then it adds, maybe they are upset with you. Then it goes further and says, maybe everything is changing. Before long, your body is tense, your heart is heavy, and your mind is defending itself against a situation that may not even exist. Nothing has happened yet, but inside you, a full battle has already begun. This is how peace gets stolen. Not always by real events, but by untested thoughts that are allowed to speak like judges. A thought with no evidence can still feel powerful. That is what makes it dangerous. It may come with emotion, and emotion can make a thought feel true. You feel afraid, so the mind says there must be danger. You feel rejected, so the mind says someone must be leaving. You feel guilty, so the mind says you must have done something wrong. You feel uncertain, so the mind says something bad must be coming. But feelings are not always facts. They are signals. They deserve attention, but they do not always deserve obedience. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that the first impression is not always the final truth. The mind sees something and quickly gives it meaning. Someone does not reply, and the mind calls it rejection. A plan changes, and the mind calls it failure. A person becomes quiet, and the mind calls it anger. A door closes, and the mind calls it the end. But the Stoic does not rush to agree with the first meaning the mind creates. The Stoic pauses and asks, "What proof do I have?" That question is not cold, it is protective. What proof do I have? Brings you back from panic to reality. It does not deny your feelings. It simply asks fear to stop pretending it is evidence. If someone has not replied, the only proof you have is that they have not replied yet. You do not have proof that they hate you. If tomorrow is uncertain, the only proof you have is that tomorrow is not here. You do not have proof that it will destroy you. If you made a mistake in the past, the proof is that a mistake happened. You do not have proof that your whole life is ruined. If you feel afraid tonight, the proof is that fear is present. You do not have proof that danger is present. This difference can save your peace. Overthinking grows when you argue with baseless thoughts as if they are worthy opponents. The mind says, "What if everything goes wrong?" And you begin answering. You explain, you defend, you search for reassurance, you replay details, you try to prove the thought wrong. But the more you argue with it, the more important it becomes. You give it a chair at the table. You let it take your time. You let it use your energy. And because fear is creative, it will always find another question. You answer one, "What if?" and it creates another. What if they are angry? You answer, "Maybe they are just busy." Then fear says, "But what if they are busy because they no longer care?" You answer that. Then fear says, "But what if this is the beginning of something worse?" You answer again. And soon you are trapped in a debate with a thought that never intended to be satisfied. It did not come for truth. It came for attention. This is why peace begins when you stop arguing, not because the thought has won, not because you agree with it, not because you are ignoring danger, but because you finally understand that not every thought deserves a courtroom. Some thoughts do not need answers. They need distance. Some fears do not need long explanations. They need boundaries. Some worries do not need proof against them. They need to be left unfed until reality speaks clearly. There is strength in saying, "I will not debate this without evidence." That sentence places the mind back under wise authority. It tells fear, "You may speak, but you may not rule." It tells suspicion, "You may appear, but you may not become my truth." It tells anxiety, "You may knock, but I will not build my night around you." This is not denial. Denial refuses to look at reality. Wisdom refuses to invent reality before it arrives. Many people mistake mental argument for problem solving. They think if they keep debating a fear, they are being careful. But when there is no evidence, the argument often becomes a trap. The mind is trying to solve something that has no form. It is trying to defeat a shadow by punching the wall. You cannot solve a thought that keeps changing shape. You can only stop feeding it. The Stoic practice is to return to what is known. What is known in this moment? The body is here. The breath is here. The room is here. The night is here. A thought is present. A feeling is present. But the feared future is not here. The imagined rejection is not here. The disaster is not here. The final judgment is not here. When you return to what is known, the mind begins to lose its permission to create suffering out of air. This matters because the overthinking mind often acts like a storyteller in the dark. It takes small pieces and fills the empty spaces with fear. A short reply becomes proof of distance. A tired voice becomes proof of anger. A quiet day becomes proof that something bad is coming. A personal mistake becomes proof that nothing will ever change. But empty spaces do not have to be filled with pain. Silence does not always mean rejection. Delay does not always mean loss. Uncertainty does not always mean danger. A feeling does not always mean truth. Tonight, you can let the empty spaces remain empty. You do not need to rush to fill what you do not know. You do not need to invent an ending to every unfinished situation. You do not need to explain every silence before morning. You do not need to know what someone thinks unless they tell you. You do not need to punish yourself for possibilities. You do not need to suffer because your mind whispered, maybe. Maybe is not evidence. That is a simple sentence, but it can change the night. Maybe they are upset. Maybe they are not. Maybe tomorrow will be hard. Maybe it will not. Maybe the mistake matters. Maybe it can be repaired. Maybe something changes. Maybe something opens. The mind often chooses the darkest maybe and calls it preparation. But if you do not know, then you do not know. And if you do not know, you do not have to suffer as if the worst has already been proven. There is peace in admitting, I do not know yet. The anxious mind hates that sentence because it wants certainty immediately. But the wise mind can rest inside it. I do not know yet is not weakness. It is honesty. It keeps you from turning imagination into evidence. It keeps you from hurting your own heart with conclusions that life has not confirmed. It keeps you from making decisions while fear is pretending to be clarity. The Stoics would remind you that your task is not to control every impression, but to judge it rightly. A thought may arrive, that is natural. A fear may rise, that is human. But before you let it shape your mood, your sleep, your choices, or your sense of worth, ask it to show its evidence. If it has none, let it pass. If it has facts, meet those facts calmly. If there is action to take, take it. If there is no action, release it. This is the clean path. And the body will slowly learn this path too. At first, a baseless thought may still make your chest tighten. That does not mean you have failed. The body may be used to reacting before the mind has examined anything. So be patient with yourself. Let the thought come. Feel the reaction. Then soften the body. Lower the shoulders. Relax the jaw. Breathe slowly. Say inwardly, there is no evidence for this right now. The thought may come again. Say it again. Not angrily, not desperately. Firmly, like someone closing a door that does not need to stay open. Over time, the mind begins to understand that it cannot get your full attention just by frightening you. It learns that suspicion is not enough. It learns that fear must not be treated like fact. It learns that your peace is no longer available to every unsupported story. This is how the inner world becomes calmer. Not because thoughts disappear forever, but because their power is reduced. You stop making them bigger by fighting them. This is one of the quiet secrets of peace. Some thoughts grow because you keep arguing with them. You think you are defending yourself, but you are actually keeping the thought alive. It is like holding a coal because you want to prove it cannot burn you. The wiser move is to put it down. You do not need to win every mental debate. You need to stop attending debates that should never have started. So tonight, let unsupported thoughts lose their audience. If fear has no evidence, it does not get your night. If suspicion has no proof, it does not get your peace. If guilt has no lesson, it does not get your body. If worry has no action, it does not get your attention. Let your mind become a place where thoughts are examined before they are believed. And when the thought says, "But what if?" you can answer, "When reality speaks, I will listen. Until then, I will rest." That is Stoic peace, not pretending nothing can happen, not refusing to care, not closing your eyes to life, but refusing to suffer from stories that have not become true, refusing to bow before shadows, refusing to turn every feeling into a verdict, refusing to let the night become a courtroom for evidence that does not exist. By morning, the mind may feel quieter, because you stopped giving baseless thoughts something to fight against. You stopped feeding them with arguments. You stopped treating every fear like a witness. You returned to what is known, what is present, what is real. And in that return, peace begins, not when every thought is gone, but when thoughts without evidence no longer have permission to rule you. And after learning to stop arguing with thoughts that have no evidence, another quiet burden becomes easier to see. The mind does not only argue with itself. Sometimes it creates entire conversations that never happened. It prepares replies to words no one has spoken. It defends itself against accusations no one has made. It explains, apologizes, proves, corrects, and fights inside a room where no one else is actually present. And by the time the night grows deeper, the body is tired from a conversation that existed only in thought. There is a special kind of exhaustion that comes from speaking silently for hours. You may be lying still, but inside the mind is busy. It is telling someone what they should have understood. It is answering the question they might ask tomorrow. It is explaining why you did what you did. It is trying to make them see your heart. It is correcting their judgment. It is proving that you are not careless, not selfish, not weak, not wrong. And because the conversation feels emotionally real, the body reacts as if it is truly happening. The chest tightens, the face grows tense, the breathing changes, the heart carries the weight of words that never left your mouth. This is one of the ways overthinking steals rest. It turns silence into a stage. The mind brings people into your night without asking permission. A family member, a friend, a partner, a co-worker, someone who hurt you, someone who misunderstood you, someone whose opinion still carries too much weight. And suddenly you are no longer resting. You are standing before them in your mind, trying to win peace from someone who is not even there. But peace cannot be won in an imaginary conversation. That is what makes this so tiring. There is no true ending. Because the other person is not present, the mind can make them say anything. It can make them accuse you again. It can make them misunderstand you again. It can make them reject your explanation again. It can make them respond in the exact way you fear most. So you keep answering. You keep adjusting your words. You keep searching for the perfect sentence that will finally make the whole situation feel safe. But because the conversation is not real, no sentence ever closes it. The Stoics would call this a misuse of attention. Your attention is one of the few things that belongs to you. Where you place it shapes your inner life. If you place it inside conversations that are not happening, your body pays for events that are not real. If you place it inside arguments from the past, you suffer from the same wound again. If you place it inside future confrontations, you lose peace before anything has occurred. The mind may say, "I am preparing," but often it is not preparing. It is reliving fear through imagined dialogue. Real communication happens in reality. Imaginary communication happens in anxiety. That difference matters. There may be a conversation you truly need to have. There may be words you need to speak. There may be a boundary you need to set, an apology you need to offer, a truth you need to express. But if the person is not there tonight, then repeating the conversation in your head for hours will not make it more honest. It will only make you more tired. A clear mind may help you speak better tomorrow. A drained mind will only make you speak from tension, fear, or anger. This is why the Stoic practice is not to rehearse endlessly, but to prepare simply. If a conversation is necessary, reduce it to its essence. What is true? What is kind? What is within your control? What must be said clearly? What tone reflects your character? That is enough. You do not need to script every possible reply. You do not need to predict every reaction. You do not need to defend yourself against every version of misunderstanding. You are responsible for your words, not for controlling how another person receives them. This truth can release a heavy chain from the mind. Many imaginary conversations continue because you are trying to control another person's perception. You want them to understand you perfectly. You want them to admit where they were unfair. You want them to see your pain exactly as it happened. You want them to respond with gentleness. You want them to give you the closure that would let your body relax. But other people's reactions are not yours to command. Their understanding is not yours to force. Their apology is not yours to extract through mental rehearsal. Their opinion is not yours to manage from the darkness of your room. The Stoic does not say this to make you cold. The Stoic says it to make you free. You can speak with honesty, but you cannot force understanding. You can explain your heart, but you cannot make someone receive it with care. You can apologize, but you cannot control forgiveness. You can set a boundary, but you cannot control whether someone respects it immediately. You can tell the truth, but you cannot control whether another person is ready for truth. Once you accept this, you stop spending your night trying to win a conversation that life has not even placed before you yet. There is also another kind of imaginary conversation, the one you wish you had in the past. The mind returns to a moment and says, "I should have said this. I should have defended myself. I should have asked that question. I should have walked away sooner. I should have made them understand." Then it rewrites the scene over and over, giving you stronger words, sharper replies, better timing, more courage. But no matter how perfect the new version becomes, the past remains unchanged. The body may feel like it is fighting for justice, but the mind is only reopening a door that no longer leads anywhere. This does not mean the past does not matter. It means the past should teach you, not trap you. If there was something you failed to say, let it become wisdom for the future. If there was a boundary you did not set, let it teach you where your limits are now. If there was a moment when you stayed silent out of fear, let it soften your judgment toward the version of you who did not yet know how to speak. That younger self, that tired self, that frightened self, that confused self did not have the strength or clarity you have now. Do not punish them all night for not having tools they had not yet learned. A past conversation can become a teacher, but it should not become a prison. Tonight, you can ask yourself gently, is this conversation happening now? If the answer is no, then the next question is there something useful I need to write down for tomorrow? If yes, write it simply. One sentence, one truth, one action. But if there is no action, no real person present, no immediate need, then call it what it is, mental rehearsal, and then return. Return to the body, return to the breath, return to the room, return to the truth that you are here, not there. Return to the quiet fact that no one is standing before you, demanding an answer. Return to the safety of this moment, where you do not need to defend your whole life. The mind may resist this. It may say, "But I need to be ready." It may say, "But they were wrong." It may say, "But what if they say this tomorrow?" It may say, "But I need to make them understand." And you can answer softly, "When the real conversation comes, I will meet it with the clearest mind I can. But I will not lose tonight to a conversation that is not here." That is discipline, not the loud kind, not the kind that looks impressive from the outside, the quiet kind, the kind that closes the courtroom inside your head, the kind that refuses to keep calling witnesses from old pain, the kind that stops practicing suffering in advance, the kind that understands that every time you rehearse an imaginary conversation, you train the body to live inside conflict even when the room is peaceful. Some people are not keeping you awake. Your imagined version of them is. That sentence may feel uncomfortable, but it can also set you free. The person may not be speaking right now. They may not be accusing you right now. They may not be rejecting you right now. They may not be judging you right now. But the mind has brought their image into the night and given it a voice. And because the voice sounds familiar, you respond as if it deserves your attention. But tonight, you can take that authority back. You can say, "No one is here right now. No conversation is happening right now. I do not need to answer a voice my mind created." You can let the imagined person fade. You can let the argument lose its shape. You can let the unsaid words rest for now. If they must be spoken, they will be spoken in real life, with real breath, at the right time, from a calmer place. If they do not need to be spoken, they can dissolve without taking more of your peace. This is how the mind becomes quieter, not by winning every inner argument, but by no longer attending them, not by finding the perfect reply, but by realizing that peace does not require one, not by making every person understand you, but by understanding yourself enough to stop begging imaginary conversations for safety. And as the night continues, let this truth settle. You do not have to defend yourself in an empty room. You do not have to explain your heart to shadows. You do not have to rehearse tomorrow's courage while destroying tonight's rest. You do not have to keep speaking inside your mind to people who are not here. By morning, the exhaustion that came from silent conversations can begin to lift. The mind can feel less crowded, less defensive, less trapped in scenes that never happened. And in that space, something softer can return. Not the need to be understood by everyone, but the peace of no longer abandoning yourself for conversations that have not even begun. And after stepping out of conversations that never happened, another quiet habit begins to reveal itself. The mind does not only create imaginary people and imaginary arguments. It also creates imaginary endings. It wants to know how everything will turn out before it allows the body to sleep. It wants to see the result, the reaction, the consequence, the answer, the final shape of tomorrow. But life was never meant to be fully predicted before the night gives you rest. There is a deep tiredness that comes from needing to know every outcome in advance. The mind says, "What will happen if I make this choice?" Then before one answer settles, it asks, "What if that choice goes wrong?" Then it asks, "What if I regret it? What if they leave? What if I fail? What if I am not ready? What if the worst thing happens?" Soon you are no longer resting in bed. You are standing at the edge of many possible futures, trying to inspect each one like a person searching for danger in a dark forest. But the future does not open that way. No matter how deeply you think, no matter how many outcomes you imagine, no matter how many paths you mentally walk through, life will still keep some of its answers hidden until their time arrives. This can feel painful to the overthinking mind because it wants certainty before it gives you peace. It wants a guarantee before it relaxes. It wants every door labeled safe before it takes one step. But the Stoic mind learns something different. Peace does not come from predicting every outcome. Peace comes from trusting yourself to meet outcomes with wisdom when they arrive. That is a very different kind of strength. The overthinking mind believes prediction is protection. It thinks, if I can see it before it happens, it will hurt less. So it studies every possibility. It rehearses disappointment. It prepares for rejection. It calculates failure. It builds emotional shelters against storms that may never come. And for a moment, this can feel like control. But the control is not real. It is only mental activity. The body becomes tense. The heart becomes heavy. And the night becomes crowded with future versions of pain. This is how prediction becomes suffering. You are not only thinking about what might happen, you are living through it early. Your body does not always know the difference between a real danger and a vividly imagined one. So when the mind predicts loss, the body tightens as if loss has arrived. When the mind predicts shame, the body reacts as if judgment is already happening. When the mind predicts failure, the heart lowers itself before the day has even begun. And by the time morning comes, you have already spent strength on events that may not exist outside your thoughts. The Stoics warned against this kind of borrowed suffering. They understood that the future is not yours to possess. You may prepare for it. You may act wisely toward it. You may build habits that make you stronger for it. But you cannot own it before it arrives. You cannot demand that life show you every result before you agree to rest. You cannot force tomorrow to become clear by worrying through the night. What you can do is return to your part. Your part is not to predict everything. Your part is to choose well now. Your part is to speak with honesty when the moment comes. Your part is to act with discipline when action is needed. Your part is to meet uncertainty without letting it turn you into someone you do not want to become. Your part is to protect your character, not control every consequence. This is where Stoicism becomes deeply freeing. It teaches you that outcomes are influenced by your actions, but they are not completely owned by you. You can study, but you cannot fully control the result. You can love someone, but you cannot control their heart. You can speak clearly, but you cannot control how they understand you. You can make a plan, but you cannot control every interruption. You can make a wise choice, but you cannot see every consequence before choosing. Life is a partnership between your effort and things beyond your power. The overthinking mind hates that partnership. It wants total control, but total control is not available to any human being. Even the strongest person cannot command every outcome. Even the wisest person cannot see every turn ahead. Even the most careful person cannot avoid every mistake, delay, loss, or surprise. This is not because life is cruel. It is because life is alive. It moves, it changes, it responds, it unfolds. And because it unfolds, some knowledge can only come through time. You do not need to know the whole ending tonight. You only need to know the next honest step. This is one of the kindest truths you can offer your mind before sleep. The mind may ask for the whole road, but the soul only needs enough light for one step, one decision, one breath, one act of patience, one boundary, one apology, one moment of courage, one return to what is real. When you reduce the future to the next right step, the mind stops drowning in 1,000 possible endings. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop confusing care with control. Caring says, I will do what is mine. Control says, I must know how everything ends. Caring is warm. Control is tense. Caring allows rest after honest effort. Control demands more thinking, even after nothing more can be done. Caring keeps you human. Control turns you into a tired watchman standing over doors that have not opened yet. Tonight, the practice is to notice when the mind is demanding an outcome. It may say, "I need to know whether this will work." You can answer, "I will know more when I take the next step." It may say, "I need to know how they will respond." You can answer, "Their response belongs to them." It may say, "I need to know if I will be okay." You can answer, "I have survived uncertainty before, and I can meet what comes one moment at a time." It may say, "I need to know the ending." You can answer, "The ending is not here tonight." These answers may sound simple, but they place the mind back inside reality. They stop the mind from pretending that the future is a room you can enter before its door opens. They remind you that tonight is not the place where every outcome must be decided. Tonight is the place where your strength must be restored. A tired mind is not a good prophet. Remember that. A tired mind predicts from fear, not from wisdom. It sees shadows and calls them signs. It sees uncertainty and calls it danger. It sees silence and calls it rejection. It sees delay and calls it failure. It sees one hard moment and calls it the whole future. If you let a tired mind predict your life, it will often choose the darkest ending, because darkness matches its state. That does not make the ending true. It only means the mind needs rest. This is why nighttime is not the best place to make final conclusions. Do not decide that your life is failing because you feel afraid at midnight. Do not decide that someone does not care because your tired heart feels lonely. Do not decide that tomorrow is impossible because your body has no strength tonight. Do not decide that the future is closed because your mind cannot see the door in the dark. Let morning come before you crown fear as truth. The Stoic practice is to hold outcomes lightly. This does not mean you become passive. It means you work without gripping. You prepare without worshipping certainty. You care without becoming possessed by results. You act with full effort, then allow life to reveal what your effort becomes. This is not easy. The mind wants to grip because gripping feels safer than trust. But gripping the future does not make it obey. It only makes the present painful. So release the grip slowly. Release the need to know how every conversation will end. Release the need to know whether every plan will succeed. Release the need to know whether every person will understand you. Release the need to know whether every fear will disappear. Release the need to know the full shape of tomorrow before allowing your eyes to close. You are not being asked to surrender your life. You are being asked to surrender the illusion that your mind can control life by predicting it. There is a quiet confidence that grows when you stop needing every outcome in advance. It says, "Whatever comes, I will meet it with the strength available to me." It says, "If I need help, I can seek it." It says, "If I make a mistake, I can learn." It says, "If something changes, I can adjust." It says, "If I do not know yet, I can wait without destroying myself." This is not blind optimism, it is inner steadiness. The mind may still offer possible endings. Let them pass. One ending may look bright, one may look painful, one may look confusing, one may look uncertain. You do not have to chase any of them tonight. They are only mental pictures, not reality. Let them rise and fade like scenes passing across a distant screen. You are here. The body is here. The breath is here. The future is not asking for your answer yet. And when the need to predict returns, bring yourself back to one question. What is mine to do now? If the answer is nothing, then nothing is the practice. Not empty nothing, restful nothing, wise nothing. The nothing that says, "I have reached the edge of my control for tonight." The nothing that lets the mind stop digging where there is no answer. The nothing that allows the body to repair itself. The nothing that gives tomorrow a calmer person to work with. By morning, the need to predict may feel weaker because you stopped feeding it with attention. You stopped treating uncertainty like an emergency. You stopped demanding that life reveal every outcome before you rested. And in that release, the mind begins to understand something powerful. You do not need to see the whole future to be safe tonight. You only need to return to what is real, let what is unknown remain unknown, and trust that when the next moment arrives, you will meet it from a quieter place. And after releasing the need to predict every outcome, you may notice another pattern waiting beneath it. The mind does not only run ahead into the future, it also runs backward into the past. It returns to places you already left, moments you already endured, words you already heard, pain you already survived. The soul has crossed the fire, but the mind keeps walking back into the smoke, asking why it still smells like hurt. There is a strange sadness in replaying what did not destroy you. You made it through the moment. You lived through the loss, the mistake, the betrayal, the embarrassment, the disappointment, the silence, the season that once felt impossible. You carried yourself through days when you did not know how you would continue. You woke up after nights that felt too heavy. You kept breathing after something inside you felt broken. And yet, even after surviving it, the mind sometimes returns as if the danger is still happening. This is why healing can feel confusing. The event is over, but the mind keeps bringing it back. The person is gone, but their words still echo. The moment has passed, but the body still reacts. The wound has closed in some places, but the memory keeps touching it. And because the memory feels alive, you may think you have not healed at all. But sometimes the mind replays what the soul has survived, not because you are still trapped there, but because a part of you is still trying to understand how it happened, why it happened, and how to make sure it never happens again. The mind is a recorder, but fear turns it into a projector. It does not only remember, it replays. It puts the old scene on the wall of the present and asks you to watch again. It shows you the face, the words, the moment, the mistake, the choice, the feeling. It asks, how did you not see it? Why did you allow it? What should you have done? What if it happens again? And suddenly, you are not lying in your bed tonight. You are back inside yesterday, back inside that old room, back inside that old pain, answering questions that cannot change what happened. The Stoics understood that memory can either teach the mind or enslave it. A memory becomes a teacher when it gives you wisdom. It shows you where to be more careful, where to speak sooner, where to protect your peace, where to stop giving power away, where to forgive yourself, where to choose differently. But a memory becomes a prison when it demands suffering without offering guidance. It keeps replaying the same scene, not to make you wiser, but to keep you wounded. It asks for your attention again and again, but it gives you no new truth. This is where you must learn to ask the memory a simple question. Have you come to teach me, or have you come to torment me? If the memory has come to teach, listen calmly. Take the lesson. Let it shape your character. Let it strengthen your boundaries. Let it make you more awake, more honest, more compassionate, more careful with your life. But if the memory has come only to torment, you do not have to sit with it all night like a student before a cruel teacher. You can say, I have already learned what I needed. I do not need to suffer this again to prove the lesson was real. That is a powerful kind of release. Many people believe that if they stop replaying the past, they are pretending it did not matter. But release is not denial. Release does not say, it was nothing. Release says, it happened, it affected me, it taught me, but it does not get to keep owning my night. You can honor what you survived without reopening it every evening. You can remember without returning. You can carry wisdom from pain without carrying the pain in its rawest form forever. The overthinking mind struggles with this because it wants complete closure. It wants the past to make perfect sense before it lets the body rest. It wants every person's motive explained. It wants every missed sign revealed. It wants every unfair thing balanced. It wants every version of the story corrected. But some parts of the past may never give you the explanation you deserve. Some people may never admit what they did. Some moments may never become fair. Some endings may never feel clean. And if you wait for the past to explain itself perfectly before you allow peace, the past will keep controlling your present. The Stoic path offers another way. It does not ask, "How do I make the past different?" It asks, "How do I meet this memory with wisdom now?" Because now is the only place your freedom lives. You cannot go back and give yourself the words you needed then. But you can give yourself gentleness now. You cannot undo the choice you made with the knowledge you had at the time. But you can stop judging your younger self with the wisdom you gained afterward. You cannot force someone to understand the pain they caused, but you can stop letting their lack of understanding decide whether you deserve rest. The mind often replays what the soul survived because it is searching for power. Pain can make a person feel helpless, and replaying the event can feel like trying to regain control. The mind thinks, "If I study it enough, I will never be caught off guard again. If I keep remembering it, I will never become that vulnerable again. If I keep analyzing it, I will finally feel safe." But endless replay does not always create safety. Sometimes it keeps the nervous system living as if the old danger is still near. That is why the body may tighten when the memory returns. The body does not always know that the event has ended. It feels the image, the tone, the shame, the fear, and it responds as if you are still there. So tonight, when an old memory rises, you can help the body return to the present. You can softly remind yourself, "That happened then. I am here now." Say it slowly. Let the body hear it. "That was then. This is now. I survived that moment. I am not inside it anymore." This is not just comfort. It is orientation. You are teaching the mind where it is. You are teaching the body that the past is not the room you are in. You are teaching your nervous system that memory is not the same as danger. You are teaching your heart that remembering pain does not mean pain has returned to rule you. The mind may still ask, "Why did it happen?" And sometimes that question has value. But at night, when the body is tired, why can become a door with no floor beneath it. You keep falling deeper, searching for an answer that may not come. The Stoic knows that not every why can be answered before sleep. Sometimes the better question is, what kind of person will I become after this? That question brings power back. It turns your attention from what wounded you to what wisdom can grow in you. This does not make the pain good. It makes your response sacred. You are allowed to be hurt by what happened. You are allowed to admit that it changed you. You are allowed to grieve the version of yourself who had to survive it. But you are also allowed to stop giving that moment the authority to visit whenever it wants and take whatever it wants from your peace. The past may knock, but it does not own the house. Tonight, when the replay begins, do not fight the memory like an enemy. Fighting often gives it more strength. Instead, name it. This is a replay, not a command, not a prophecy, not a return, a replay. Then ask, is there a lesson here for tonight? If there is, receive it simply. If there is not, let the scene fade without chasing it. Bring your attention back to your breathing, back to the weight of the body, back to the quiet safety of the present. You do not need to watch the whole scene again. That sentence may be enough for tonight. You do not need to hear the old words again. You do not need to rebuild the old shame again. You do not need to return to the moment when you felt powerless just to prove you remember it correctly. You remember enough. You learned enough. You survived enough. Now your task is not to replay. Your task is to return. Return to the life that is still here. Return to the body that carried you through. Return to the mind that is learning how to become gentle with itself. Return to the breath that has never abandoned you, even in the hardest moments. Return to the present, where the old event is no longer happening, even if the mind still knows how to find it. And as you return, something begins to soften. The memory may not disappear completely, but it loses some of its sharpness. It no longer feels like a hand pulling you backward. It becomes something farther away, something you can see without entering. Something that happened, not something that is happening. That distance is healing. By morning, the mind may feel quieter because it stopped forcing the soul to revisit places it had already escaped. It stopped mistaking replay for protection. It stopped asking old pain to provide new answers. And in that quiet, you may begin to understand that survival is not only what happened back then. Survival is also what happens tonight, when you choose not to return to the fire just because the mind remembers the heat. And after seeing why the mind keeps replaying what the soul has already survived, another lesson rises gently in the dark. Not all suffering comes from what has happened. Much of it comes from what might happen. The mind looks at an unopened door and begins to bleed before anything has touched it. It takes a possibility, gives it weight, gives it color, gives it a voice, and then asks the body to suffer as if the future has already become fact. There is a kind of pain that has no event behind it yet. Nothing has happened, but the chest is tight. No answer has come, but the heart is already preparing for disappointment. No loss has arrived, but the mind is already grieving. No failure has taken place, but the body is already carrying shame. No danger is standing in the room, but fear has already convinced you to brace yourself. This is the hidden cruelty of possibility. It can make you suffer from something that has not even been chosen by life. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that human beings often suffer twice. First in the mind, then in reality, if reality ever brings the thing at all. But often the second suffering never comes. The imagined disaster disappears. The feared conversation softens. The outcome changes. The person responds differently. The door you thought was closing opens another way. Yet the body has already paid the price. The night has already been lost. The peace has already been spent on a shadow. This is why refusing to suffer from possibilities is not denial. It is wisdom. Denial says, nothing difficult can happen. Stoicism says, something difficult may happen, but I will not live through it before it arrives. Denial closes its eyes to reality. Wisdom keeps its eyes open without bowing to every imagined outcome. Denial pretends life is safe because it cannot bear truth. Wisdom accepts that life is uncertain and still chooses not to turn uncertainty into punishment. The overthinking mind often believes that suffering in advance is a form of preparation. It says, if I expect the worst, I will be ready. But expecting the worst does not always make you ready. Sometimes it only makes you tired. It teaches the body to live in defense. It makes peace feel unsafe. It makes every quiet moment feel like the pause before something bad happens. It trains the mind to search for danger even where there is only silence. And soon, possibility becomes a prison. You do not need proof anymore. You only need a what if. What if they leave? What if I fail? What if tomorrow changes everything? What if I am not strong enough? What if the pain returns? What if I lose what I love? What if I make the wrong choice? What if this never gets better? Each question appears small, but together they become a heavy chain around the mind. The Stoic art begins when you learn to answer possibility with presence. Not every "what if" deserves your full body. Not every possible pain deserves your sleep. Not every imagined ending deserves your tears before it happens. You can look at a possibility and say, "You may happen or you may not, but you are not here now." That sentence creates a boundary. It does not argue. It does not panic. It does not promise that life will be easy. It simply refuses to give today's peace to tomorrow's uncertainty. This is hard because the mind loves to prepare emotionally for pain. It believes if it suffers early, the real pain will hurt less later. But this is rarely true. Pain does not become lighter because you carried it before it arrived. A storm is not easier because you spent the whole night shaking before the first rain. If difficulty comes, you will still need strength. And if you have spent all your strength suffering from possibility, what will be left for reality? This is why rest is not weakness. Rest is preservation. The Stoic does not waste energy fighting enemies that have not appeared. The Stoic watches the mind carefully and asks, "Is this happening, or is this only possible?" That question is simple, but it cuts through confusion. If it is happening, meet it with courage. If it is only possible, do not kneel before it. Do not hand it the keys to your body. Do not let it steal the night. Do not let it become more powerful than the present moment. A possibility is not a command. It is not a fact. It is not a prophecy. It is not a message from fate. It is only one of many roads the mind can picture. And the mind often pictures the darkest road first, because fear wants attention. But there are other roads too. The conversation may go better than expected. The delay may mean nothing. The mistake may be repaired. The future may carry help you cannot yet see. The thing you fear may never arrive. And even if something hard does come, you may meet it with a strength you do not feel tonight. This matters because the overthinking mind underestimates your future self. It assumes that if something difficult happens, you will have only tonight's tired strength to face it. But tomorrow's you may have more clarity. Next week's you may have more information. Future you may have support, courage, timing, resources, understanding, or calm that you cannot access right now. The mind forgets this. It judges future battles with present exhaustion. It looks at tomorrow's mountain with tonight's weak legs and says, "I cannot climb." But you are not being asked to climb tonight. Tonight, you are being asked to rest. Refusing to suffer from possibilities means you stop paying emotional rent in places you may never live. It means you stop moving into imagined pain before life hands you the address. It means you stop rehearsing grief for losses that have not happened. It means you stop preparing your heart for rejection that has not been spoken. It means you stop turning uncertainty into a punishment room. The Stoics trained themselves to face reality, not fantasy. Reality may be difficult, but reality can be met. Fantasy keeps changing. Fear creates one possibility, then another, until the mind is exhausted from fighting 1,000 invisible versions of tomorrow. You cannot defeat all possible futures. You can only return to the one moment that is actually yours. This moment. Here the body can soften. Here the breath can slow. Here the night can hold you without asking for answers. Here the mind can learn that safety does not require knowing everything. Here you can say, "I will meet what comes when it comes. I will not suffer from it before it arrives." That is not a small practice. That is inner strength. It takes strength to stop feeding fear when fear sounds convincing. It takes discipline to remain present when the mind wants to run ahead. It takes courage to let uncertainty remain uncertain without filling it with disaster. It takes wisdom to say maybe and not turn that maybe into pain. Many people think courage begins when the hard thing happens. But sometimes courage begins before that, when you refuse to let a possible hard thing control your peace. Tonight, notice how many possibilities are asking for your attention. Notice the ones that have no proof. Notice the ones that begin with "what if?" Notice the ones that make your body tense without giving you one clear action. Then quietly separate them from reality. You do not have to solve them. You do not have to prove them wrong. You do not have to chase them until they become harmless. You only have to recognize that they are not here. If there is a real step to take it simply. If there is no real step, return to rest. This is how the mind learns peace. Not by being promised that nothing bad will happen, but by learning that it does not need to suffer before life gives it something real to face. The mind begins to understand that possibility is not proof. Fear is not preparation. Worry is not protection. And suffering early does not make you stronger. It only makes you tired before strength is needed. So let the possible remain possible tonight. Do not turn it into a sentence. Do not make it a certainty. Do not place it on your chest like a stone. Let it float outside the gates of your peace. If it becomes real, you will meet it in reality. If it never comes, you will be grateful you did not lose this night to something that was only passing through the mind. By morning, the mind may feel quieter because it stopped bleeding for futures that had not arrived. It stopped treating every possible pain as a present wound. It stopped giving fear the power to make the body suffer in advance. And in that quiet, the soul remembers something powerful. You do not need to be certain that life will be easy before you allow yourself to rest. You only need to trust that when life becomes real, you will meet it from a steadier place. And after learning the Stoic art of refusing to suffer from possibilities, the next lesson becomes even more personal. The place meant to restore you can slowly become the place where your mind goes to war. The bed becomes a battlefield, not because the sheets are heavy, not because the room is unsafe, but because the mind drags unfinished worries into the one place where the body is asking to be left alone. There is a quiet sadness in lying down to rest and rising up more exhausted than before. The body enters the bed wanting peace. The bones want softness, the eyes want darkness, the breath wants to slow. But the mind arrives carrying papers, memories, fears, questions, regrets, plans, and silent alarms. It spreads them across the inner room and says, "Before we sleep, we must look at all of this." And suddenly, the bed is no longer a place of surrender. It becomes a meeting room for every unfinished worry you avoided during the day. This is how rest becomes conflict. One worry enters, then another follows. You think about tomorrow, then you think about money, then you remember something someone said, then you wonder if you made the wrong choice, then you remember a message you forgot to answer, then a fear from the future appears, then a regret from the past joins it. And before long, your mind is not handling one concern. It is fighting on many fronts at once. No wonder the body cannot sleep. The Stoics would ask a simple but powerful question here. What battle is actually yours tonight? Because most of the battles that begin in bed are not real battles. They are unfinished thoughts looking for a place to fight. They are concerns without immediate action. They are fears without evidence. They are responsibilities that belong to tomorrow. They are memories that need compassion, not another trial. They are possibilities pretending to be emergencies. The bed should not become a courtroom, a planning office, a battlefield, and a punishment room all at once. But for many people, that is exactly what happens. The moment they lie down, the mind begins calling every worry forward. It says, "You forgot this. You should have handled that better. What if this goes wrong? What if they misunderstood you? What if tomorrow becomes too much? Why did you say that? Why did they act that way? What if nothing changes? And because the body is still, there is no movement to interrupt the attack. This is why you must teach the mind that the bed has a purpose. The bed is not where you solve your whole life. The bed is not where you punish yourself for being human. The bed is not where you rehearse every fear until morning. The bed is not where you carry tomorrow before it has arrived. The bed is where the body repairs what the day has taken. It is where the mind is allowed to loosen its grip. It is where the nervous system learns that the world can continue without your constant watch. This may sound simple, but it is a discipline. The overthinking mind does not like boundaries. It wants access to every hour, every space, every quiet moment. It wants to enter your meals, your walks, your work, your silence, and your sleep. It wants to convince you that every moment is useful for worrying. But Stoicism teaches that peace requires inner order. There must be a time for action, a time for reflection, and a time for release. When every time becomes worry time, the soul never rests. So tonight, the practice is to stop letting unfinished worries invade the place meant for restoration. This begins before sleep. Many worries become louder in bed because they were never given a proper place during the day. They were ignored, pushed away, delayed, or swallowed. Then at night, when the world becomes quiet, they return with force. The answer is not to think about them all night. The answer is to give them a container. A container can be simple: a small notebook, a note on your phone, a few sentences before bed. You write what is unfinished, not to solve everything, but to remove it from the battlefield of the mind. You might write, "This is worrying me. This needs action tomorrow. This is not in my control. This is only fear. This can wait." When the worry is placed somewhere outside the mind receives a message. This has been seen. It does not need to keep shouting. This is not magic. It is order. The Stoic mind values order because disorder creates unnecessary suffering. When worries stay loose in the mind, they circle without structure. They return again and again because they have no resting place. But when you name them, you reduce their power. A worry that remains vague can feel endless. A worry that is written down becomes smaller, clearer, more honest. You can look at it and ask, is this a real problem or mental noise? Is there action for tonight or is this for tomorrow? Is this mine to handle or is this beyond my control? This is how the battlefield becomes a quiet room again. Some worries need action. If there is something simple you must do before bed, do it calmly. Set the alarm, place the item by the door, write the reminder, send the necessary message if it is truly appropriate. Prepare what can be prepared, but after that, stop. Do not turn a simple action into 3 hours of mental rehearsal. Once the useful step is done, the rest is no longer preparation. It is fear asking for more attention. Other worries do not need action. They need release, a person's opinion, an outcome not yet known, a future event outside your control, a memory that has already taught its lesson, a possibility that has not become reality. These worries may knock loudly, but they are not entitled to your whole night. You can say, "You are not mine to solve in bed." That sentence is firm, quiet, and freeing. The mind may resist. It may say, "But this is important," and maybe it is important. But important does not always mean immediate. Important does not always mean tonight. Important does not always mean thinking about it while exhausted will help. Some things are important enough to deserve a rested mind. Some conversations are important enough to wait for calmness. Some decisions are important enough not to be made from fear in the dark. That is a truth many people forget. They treat sleep as if it is an interruption to problem solving. But sleep is part of problem solving. A mind that rests can see options a tired mind cannot see. A body that sleeps can carry emotions with more patience. A heart that softens overnight can meet difficulty without turning it into disaster. When you refuse rest in the name of solving, you often become less able to solve. So the bed must become a boundary. When you lie down, you can quietly tell yourself, "This is not where I fight my life." Let that sentence settle into the body. This is not where I punish myself. Let the shoulders drop. This is not where I rehearse tomorrow. Let the jaw soften. This is where I return. Let the breath slow. This is where I allow the day to leave me. The overthinking mind may still bring a worry. That is okay. The goal is not to never have a thought in bed. The goal is to stop turning each thought into a battle. A worry can appear without becoming a war. A memory can appear without becoming a trial. A fear can appear without becoming a command. You can notice it and say, "Not now," not with anger, not with panic, with authority. "Not now" is a complete answer. It tells the mind that there is a time for this, and this is not the time. It tells worry that it will not be allowed to take over the bed. It tells the body that rest is still permitted. It tells the soul that peace does not have to wait until every concern is solved. The more you practice this, the more the mind begins to learn that bedtime is not an invitation to begin another battle. And if the worry returns, return again. This is the practice. Return to the breath. Return to the weight of the body. Return to the room. Return to the present moment. Return to the truth that right now you are not inside tomorrow. You are not inside the past. You are not standing before the person you fear. You are not facing the outcome. You are here, in bed, breathing, held by the night, allowed to rest. There is great strength in protecting the peace of this place, because the way you use your bed teaches the mind how to understand stillness. If you use the bed for worry, the mind begins to associate stillness with danger. But if you keep returning to release, the mind begins to associate stillness with safety. Over time, the body learns that lying down does not mean the battle begins. It means the battle is over for today. And that is what your tired mind needs to know. The day may have been unfinished. Most days are. Life may still carry questions. Most lives do. Tomorrow may still need courage. Many tomorrows will. But tonight does not have to become the place where every unresolved thing gathers to steal your breath. You can close the gates. You can lower the weapons. You can decide that the bed is no longer a battlefield. By morning, your worries may not all be gone, but they may no longer feel like enemies surrounding you in the dark. They may have been placed where they belong, some in tomorrow, some outside your control, some already answered, some not worth carrying. And with that order, the mind begins to soften. The body begins to trust stillness again. The bed becomes what it was always meant to be, not a battlefield of unfinished worries, but a quiet place where the soul remembers how to lay its burdens down. And after learning how to stop turning your bed into a battlefield, one more hidden force becomes easier to notice. Control. Not the loud kind that shouts and demands, the quiet kind that whispers at night. Just think a little more. Hold everything tighter. Do not let go yet. It feels safe in the moment. It feels like you are protecting yourself. But slowly, control becomes the very hand that keeps the body from resting. Control feels comforting at night because the unknown feels too open. When the room is dark and the world becomes quiet, the mind starts reaching for something solid. It wants certainty. It wants answers. It wants proof that tomorrow will not hurt, that people will not disappoint, that mistakes will not repeat, that life will not shift without warning. And because those proofs are not available, the mind reaches for control instead. It begins to plan, predict, rehearse, review, and prepare. It tells you, if we can think through every angle, maybe we will finally feel safe. For a while, this can feel soothing. The mind enjoys the feeling of doing something. Even if nothing is truly changing, mental activity can create the illusion of safety. It feels better than helplessness. It feels better than waiting. It feels better than admitting, I do not know. So the mind keeps working. It tries to control tomorrow from bed. It tries to control other people's thoughts from silence. It tries to control old pain by replaying it. It tries to control future disappointment by expecting it early. It tries to control uncertainty by refusing to rest. But the body knows the truth. The body knows when control is no longer wisdom. It feels the tight jaw, the raised shoulders, the shallow breath, the heavy chest, the restless hands, the tired eyes that cannot close fully. The mind may call it preparation, but the body experiences it as danger. The mind may say, I am just being responsible, but the body hears, we are not safe yet. And as long as the body receives that message, deep rest becomes difficult. This is why control steals rest from the body. It keeps the nervous system on guard. The body was not designed to sleep while preparing for battle. It cannot fully soften while the mind keeps sending signals of threat. Every time you replay a worry, the body responds. Every time you predict disaster, the body tightens. Every time you try to mentally force an outcome, the body becomes alert. It does not matter that you are lying in bed. Inside, the body feels as though it is still standing watch. The Stoics understood that control must be placed in its proper home. They did not say, control nothing. They said, control what is yours, your choices, your effort, your honesty, your discipline, your response, your character, your attention. These belong to you, but outcomes do not fully belong to you. Other people's opinions do not belong to you. Tomorrow's events do not fully belong to you. The past does not belong to you anymore. The future does not yet belong to you at all. When the mind tries to control what is not yours, it becomes exhausted. This is where many people lose peace. They are not tired only because life is hard. They are tired because they are trying to manage things no human being can manage completely. They are trying to control how someone feels, control how tomorrow unfolds, control how the past is remembered, control whether every decision leads to perfect results, control whether every person understands them correctly, control whether every possible danger stays away. That kind of control feels powerful for a moment, but it drains the soul. It is like holding a rope tied to something much larger than you. At first, holding on feels safer than letting go. You think, if I release this, everything may fall apart. So you grip harder. But the thing you are holding does not move according to your strength. It pulls, shifts, changes, and remains beyond you. Soon your hands ache, your body shakes, and your mind grows tired. The problem is not that you are weak. The problem is that you are gripping what was never fully yours to hold. Stoicism teaches the wisdom of loosening the grip. Not dropping your duties, not becoming careless, not refusing to act, but loosening the false belief that peace can only come when everything is under your command. This is important because the overthinking mind often believes rest must be earned through control. It says, once I know how this ends, I can rest. Once I know what they think, I can rest. Once I know tomorrow will be okay, I can rest. Once I know I made the perfect choice, I can rest. But life rarely gives that kind of certainty before sleep. So if rest depends on full control, rest will always be delayed. The deeper truth is this: the body does not need certainty to begin resting. It needs safety, and safety can come from a different message. Not, everything is controlled, but, I am allowed to stop controlling what cannot be controlled tonight. The body needs to hear that the mind is no longer forcing it to stand guard over every unknown. It needs to hear, we have done what we can. We are not fighting the future from this bed. That message is medicine. You can begin with the breath, not as a trick but as a signal. A slow breath says to the body, there is no emergency in this moment. A relaxed hand says, we are not holding the world right now. A softened jaw says, we do not have to defend ourselves here. A lowered shoulder says, the burden can leave the body for tonight. These small acts matter because control lives not only in thought but in muscle. The body stores the grip of the mind. So when you release control, release it physically too. Let the hands open. Let the stomach soften. Let the forehead smooth. Let the tongue rest. Let the back sink into the bed. Let the body feel the difference between effort and surrender. You are not surrendering your life. You are surrendering the tension that was never solving your life in the first place. Control becomes dangerous when it pretends to be love. You may say, I only worry because I care. And there is truth in that. Care is beautiful. Care means something matters. But care becomes painful when it tries to own what it loves. You can care about someone without controlling their choices. You can care about tomorrow without rehearsing it all night. You can care about your future without treating every unknown as a threat. You can care about healing without forcing every wound to close by morning. Love does not need panic to prove itself. Responsibility does not need tension to be real. Strength does not need sleeplessness to be respected. The Stoic mind learns to care cleanly. It acts where action belongs. It prepares where preparation is useful. It speaks where speech is needed. It corrects what can be corrected. Then it lets the rest return to life, to time, to truth, to the hands of what is larger than the human mind can manage in the dark. This letting go can feel frightening at first. Because if you have spent years controlling to feel safe, peace may feel like exposure. Stillness may feel like risk. Trust may feel like weakness. The mind may say, if I stop controlling, something bad will happen. But look honestly, has constant control truly protected you from pain? Or has it made you suffer even when pain was not present? Has it brought peace, or has it kept the body tense? Has it solved the future, or has it stolen the night? These questions are not meant to shame you. They are meant to wake you, because the part of you that wants control is not bad. It is tired. It wants certainty because it has known uncertainty. It wants safety because it has known hurt. It wants answers because unanswered things once made you feel powerless. So be gentle with that part of yourself. Do not fight it. Teach it. Tell it. You do not have to hold everything for us tonight. You have tried hard. You can rest now. That sentence can reach deeper than force. The mind may still try to return to control. It may bring one more worry, one more plan, one more possible danger. When it does, come back to the Stoic boundary. Is this mine? If it is yours, take the next simple step. If it is not yours, release it. If it is not yours tonight, place it in tomorrow. If it is not yours at all, let it pass without your grip. This is how control becomes wisdom instead of suffering. You control your breath by slowing it. You control your attention by returning it. You control your response by refusing to follow fear. You control your body by softening what has been tense. You control your night by no longer giving it away to things beyond your power. This is the control that brings peace. Not control over life, but control over where your soul places its energy. And as that shift happens, rest begins to return. The body feels the difference. It no longer has to brace for every possible outcome. It no longer has to carry tomorrow in its muscles. It no longer has to stay awake as proof of care. It no longer has to treat stillness like danger. The mind may not be empty, but it becomes less demanding. The breath may not be perfect, but it becomes slower. The night may not answer everything, but it becomes quieter. By morning, your life may not be fully controlled, but your body may feel more free because it was finally released from the impossible task of holding everything together through tension. And perhaps this is the deeper Stoic lesson. Peace does not begin when life finally obeys you. Peace begins when you stop asking your body to suffer for what your mind cannot control. And after seeing how control can feel comforting at night while quietly stealing rest from the body, the next lesson becomes softer, but even deeper. The mind can produce thoughts without those thoughts becoming who you are. A fear can pass through you without becoming your identity. A memory can rise without defining your name. A dark sentence can appear in the mind without becoming the truth of your soul. This matters because many people do not suffer only from thoughts. They suffer because they become attached to them. A thought appears and says, "I am failing." Soon, you do not simply notice a thought about failure. You begin to feel like a failure. A thought says, "I am not enough." Soon, it no longer feels like a passing sentence. It feels like your identity. A thought says, "I am broken." Soon, you start carrying yourself like someone permanently damaged. A thought says, "I will never be free from this." Soon, the future feels locked before it has even opened. This is how the mind traps the self. It takes a passing cloud and convinces you it is the whole sky. But a thought is not the same as you. A thought is something that appears in awareness. You are the awareness that notices it. This difference may sound small, but it is life-changing. If you are your thoughts, then every fear becomes a personal truth. Every memory becomes a definition. Every worry becomes a command. Every dark feeling becomes proof of who you are. But if thoughts are only movements passing through you, then you can witness them without becoming them. The Stoics understood this clearly. They taught that impressions come to the mind before judgment. Something appears, a feeling rises, a sentence forms, an old fear knocks. But the wise person does not immediately say, "This is me." The wise person pauses and says, "This is an impression." In simple words, this is something my mind is presenting to me. I do not have to accept it as my identity. That pause is freedom. The overthinking mind wants fusion. It wants you glued to every thought it creates. It does not want you to say, "A fearful thought is here." It wants you to say, "I am afraid, and therefore danger is real." It does not want you to say, "A painful memory is moving through me." It wants you to say, "I am still trapped in that pain." It does not want you to say, "A thought of unworthiness has appeared." It wants you to say, "I am unworthy." The difference between those sentences is the difference between being a witness and being a prisoner. Tonight, the practice is to let thoughts pass without turning them into a name tag. You are not the anxious one because anxiety appeared. You are not the weak one because tiredness came. You are not the broken one because an old wound spoke. You are not the failure because a mistake returned in memory. You are not the unwanted one because loneliness visited. You are not the lost one because you do not have every answer yet. These are experiences. They are not identities. An experience can be real without being final. That is important. You do not need to deny what you feel. Stoicism is not pretending there is no pain. It is learning how to meet pain without letting it take over the whole self. You can feel sadness without becoming sadness. You can feel fear without becoming fear. You can feel regret without becoming regret. You can feel confusion without becoming confusion. You can feel heaviness without deciding that your life is heavy forever. The mind may say, "But this thought keeps coming back. Surely that means it is true." Not always. Repetition is not proof. Some thoughts repeat because they are familiar, not because they are wise. Some thoughts return because the brain has practiced them for years. Some thoughts come back because they once protected you from something. Some thoughts repeat because tiredness opens the old pathways of fear. A thought can be repeated and still be false. A thought can be familiar and still not belong to your future. This is where you must become careful with the words, "I am." Those two words are powerful. When you place them before a passing state, you may turn weather into identity. I am anxious. I am hopeless. I am damaged. I am always like this. I am someone who cannot rest. But what if you change the language gently? Anxiety is here. A heavy thought is here. A memory is here. Fear is passing through. My mind is tired tonight. This does not erase the experience, but it stops the experience from becoming your whole self. The Stoic mind speaks with precision. It does not exaggerate pain into identity. It does not turn one thought into a life sentence. It does not say, "Because this feeling is present, this feeling is me." It observes, it names, it separates, it returns. And this separation is not cold. It is compassionate. When you stop becoming every thought, you can care for yourself more wisely. If you believe you are the fear, you may hate yourself for being afraid. But if you see fear as something passing through, you can meet it with patience. If you believe you are the mistake, you may punish yourself endlessly. But if you see the mistake as something that happened, you can learn without self-destruction. If you believe you are the sadness, you may think your whole life is dark. But if you see sadness as a visitor, you can sit with it without surrendering your entire future to it. Thoughts become dangerous when they start writing your identity without your permission. So, tonight, take that permission back. When the mind says, "You are behind," answer gently, "A comparison thought is here." When it says, "You are not enough," answer, "An old wound is speaking." When it says, "You will never change," answer, "Fear is pretending to know the future." When it says, "You ruined everything," answer, "Regret is asking for attention." When it says, "You cannot rest," answer, "The mind is used to staying alert, but the body is allowed to soften." This is not fighting the thought, it is refusing to merge with it. A river can carry leaves, branches, and dust, but the river is not any one thing floating on its surface. The sky can hold clouds, storms, birds, and darkness, but the sky is not destroyed by what passes through it. In the same way, your awareness can hold thoughts without becoming them. A thought may darken the moment, but it does not have the power to erase the whole of who you are unless you hand it that power. And you do not have to hand it that power tonight. The body can help with this practice too. When a thought appears and tries to become your identity, notice where the body grips. Maybe the chest tightens, maybe the throat closes, maybe the stomach hardens, maybe the forehead becomes tense. Instead of chasing the thought, soften the place where it landed. Breathe into the body. Let the body receive the message that this is only a passing wave, not a permanent truth. You can say quietly, "This is moving through me. It is not becoming me." Let that sentence slow the mind. This is moving through me. It is not becoming me. A fear is moving through. A memory is moving through. A worry is moving through. A feeling is moving through. Even if it moves slowly, it is still moving. Even if it returns, it is still not your identity. Even if it feels strong, it is still not the ruler of your life. The Stoic path asks you to protect the inner seat of judgment. That is the quiet place within you where you decide what you will believe, what you will follow, what you will feed, and what you will release. If every thought can sit on that throne, your life becomes unstable. But if wisdom sits there, thoughts can come and go without controlling the whole kingdom of your mind. This is how peace grows, not by removing every thought, but by putting thoughts in their proper place. They are visitors, not owners, signals, not masters, weather, not identity, movements, not final truth. Some may teach you, some may warn you, some may be useless noise, some may be old pain looking for care. But none of them are allowed to define your whole being without your consent. And tonight you can withhold that consent. You can let the thought pass across the mind like a shadow across a wall. You can notice it without standing inside it. You can feel it without naming yourself after it. You can allow it without obeying it. You can breathe while it rises, breathe while it stays, and breathe while it fades. This is the quiet art of non-attachment, not rejecting the mind, but refusing to become every shape it takes. By morning, the mind may feel lighter because it stopped turning every passing thought into a personal identity. It stopped saying, "This fear is me." It stopped saying, "This sadness is me." It stopped saying, "This mistake is me." It began to understand that thoughts can visit without owning the house. And in that understanding, a deeper peace begins. The peace of knowing that who you are is larger than anything your tired mind says in the dark. And after learning how to let thoughts pass without making them part of your identity, the next lesson becomes very important. Not every moment of looking back is wisdom. Sometimes the mind says it is reflecting, but it is really punishing you. It says, "Let us learn from this," but then it brings out old mistakes like weapons. It says, "Let us understand what happened," but then it keeps you trapped inside shame. The Stoic path teaches you to know the difference, because reflection can heal you, but emotional punishment only keeps the wound open. There is a kind of looking back that makes you wiser. It is calm, honest, and useful. It does not pretend everything was perfect. It does not hide from your mistakes. It does not excuse poor choices. It looks at the day, the memory, the reaction, or the decision, and asks, "What can this teach me?" It wants growth, not suffering. It wants clarity, not self-hatred. It wants your future to become better because your mind has learned something true. That is useful reflection, but emotional punishment feels different. It does not come to teach, it comes to attack. It takes one mistake and makes it your whole identity. It takes one weak moment and says, "This is who you are." It takes one regret and repeats it until the body feels heavy with shame. It does not ask, "What can I learn?" It says, "How could you?" It does not help you repair. It makes you feel unworthy of peace. It does not open a door forward. It locks you in the same room with the same pain. Many people confuse these two because both can begin with the same memory. You may remember something you said. You may remember a choice you made. You may remember a moment when you were impatient, afraid, careless, silent, or too emotional. At first, the mind may seem like it is trying to understand, but slowly the tone changes. What began as learning becomes accusation. What began as honesty becomes cruelty. What began as reflection becomes a private punishment no one else can see. This is where you must listen to the tone of your inner voice. Useful reflection speaks like a wise teacher. Emotional punishment speaks like an enemy wearing your own face. Useful reflection says, "This happened. Let us understand it and choose better." Emotional punishment says, "This happened because you are terrible." Useful reflection separates the action from your worth. Emotional punishment fuses them together. Useful reflection gives you a next step. Emotional punishment gives you a sentence. Useful reflection ends when the lesson is received. Emotional punishment keeps repeating even after there is nothing new to learn. The Stoics practiced daily self-examination, but they did not practice daily self-destruction. This matters. They believed in reviewing the day but not in drowning in shame. They asked where they acted with wisdom, where they lost control, where they could improve, where they allowed fear or anger to lead them. But the purpose was not to hate themselves. The purpose was to return to virtue, to become clearer, to become more disciplined, to become more human in the best sense. Reflection was a tool, not a whip. And tonight, you must stop handing your mind a whip and calling it growth. Growth does not require you to suffer endlessly from what you now understand. Once a mistake has taught you, continuing to punish yourself does not make you better. It only makes you tired. It can even keep you stuck, because a person trapped in shame often loses the strength needed to change. Shame says, "You are bad." Wisdom says, "This action was not aligned with who you want to be." Shame freezes. Wisdom guides. Shame hides. Wisdom corrects. Shame repeats the wound. Wisdom builds a new path. The difference is not small. It can change your whole night. When you lie down and a regret appears, do not immediately let the mind begin its punishment. Pause and ask, is there a lesson here? If there is, take the lesson cleanly. Maybe the lesson is to speak more gently. Maybe it is to listen before reacting. Maybe it is to stop trusting people who keep showing the same pattern. Maybe it is to prepare better. Maybe it is to rest before making decisions. Maybe it is to stop ignoring your own limits. Take the lesson and honor it. Then ask, is there an action I can take? If you need to apologize, write it down for tomorrow. If you need to correct something, make a simple plan. If you need to set a boundary, name it clearly. If you need to forgive yourself, begin with one honest sentence. I was learning. If you need to let go, admit that replaying the moment will not change it. This is reflection. It turns pain into direction. But if the mind keeps returning after the lesson is clear, then it is no longer reflecting. It is punishing. And punishment may sound familiar. It may feel deserved. It may feel like the only way to prove you care. But the Stoic would remind you that suffering is not the same as virtue. Beating yourself internally does not make you more responsible. Staying awake in guilt does not repair what happened. Hating yourself does not serve the people you hurt, the life you want, or the peace you need. If anything, it keeps you weaker than wisdom wants you to be. There is a quiet pride hidden inside emotional punishment. The mind believes that if it suffers enough, it can somehow pay for the mistake. It believes pain can become payment. But pain is not repair. Repair is repair. Change is change. Humility is humility. A better choice is a better choice. Punishing yourself all night may feel serious, but seriousness without transformation is just another form of suffering. So tonight, choose transformation over torment. Look at what must be seen, but do not stare until your soul aches. Admit what must be admitted, but do not turn confession into self-hatred. Learn what must be learned, but do not repeat the lesson like a curse. If you were wrong, let wisdom correct you. If you were hurt, let compassion meet you. If you were confused, let clarity grow slowly. If you were afraid, let courage begin again tomorrow. You are allowed to be honest without being cruel. That sentence may need to settle deep inside you. You are allowed to review your day without attacking your character. You are allowed to regret something without becoming a prisoner of regret. You are allowed to see where you failed without calling yourself a failure. You are allowed to grow without dragging shame behind you, like proof that you are serious about changing. Useful reflection has a clean ending. Emotional punishment has no ending. That is another way to know the difference. When reflection has done its work, the mind becomes quieter. Not always happy, but clearer. You feel a sense of direction. You know what needs care. You know what must change. You know what belongs to tomorrow. But emotional punishment leaves you heavier, smaller, more hopeless, and more trapped. It does not give you a path. It only keeps you circling the same painful point. Tonight, do not circle. If a memory comes, meet it with the Stoic question: what is within my control now? Not then, now. The past moment is gone. The old words have already been spoken. The choice has already been made. But now your response belongs to you. Your honesty belongs to you. Your next action belongs to you. Your willingness to learn belongs to you. Your refusal to keep injuring yourself belongs to you. That is where power returns. The mind may say, "But I should have known better." Maybe. But you know better now. Let that matter. The mind may say, "I should have acted differently." Maybe. But you can act differently next time. Let that become the offering. The mind may say, "I cannot believe I did that." But disbelief does not change the past. Wisdom does. A new pattern does. A calmer response does. A better boundary does. A more honest life does. The goal is not to erase regret. The goal is to stop letting regret become your ruler. Regret can be a lantern. It can show you where you need to walk with more care. But if you hold it too close to your chest, it burns you. Keep enough light to learn. Do not turn the light into fire. And as the night grows quiet, let this be the practice. Review gently, learn honestly, correct simply, release firmly. Do not skip the lesson, but do not sleep inside the punishment. Do not deny the mistake, but do not become the mistake. Do not run from truth, but do not let truth be spoken to you in the voice of cruelty. By morning, the mind may feel lighter because it stopped confusing growth with self-attack. It stopped calling shame wisdom. It stopped treating punishment as proof of responsibility. And in that quiet, you begin to understand one of the most healing Stoic truths. The purpose of reflection is not to make you suffer from yesterday. The purpose of reflection is to help you meet tomorrow with a cleaner heart, a steadier mind, and a wiser way of living. And after learning the difference between useful reflection and emotional punishment, the mind begins to face another quiet truth. Yesterday is not the only place where suffering hides. Sometimes the greatest weight comes from tomorrow, not tomorrow as it truly is, because tomorrow has not arrived yet, but tomorrow as the tired mind creates it before morning. The future becomes heavy when you try to carry it too early, because the strength meant for the next day is being spent in the darkness before the day even begins. There is a burden that does not come from life itself, but from trying to live too much of life at once. The body is in bed, but the mind is already standing in tomorrow. It is already answering messages, facing problems, making decisions, managing people, avoiding failure, handling pressure, preparing for disappointment, and trying to survive a day that has not opened its eyes yet. And because the mind is doing all of this while the body is tired, the future begins to feel larger than it really is. Not because tomorrow is impossible, but because you are trying to carry it without tomorrow's strength. This is why the future feels heavier at night. At night, the mind does not have the full support of the body. The body is tired. The emotions are thinner. The heart is more sensitive. The nervous system is already asking for stillness. So when the mind brings tomorrow into this exhausted state, even ordinary responsibilities can feel like mountains. A simple task can feel like a threat. A normal conversation can feel like a trial. A decision can feel like a life sentence. A small uncertainty can feel like a dark cloud over everything. But tomorrow was never meant to be carried from midnight. The Stoics understood that life gives itself to us in moments, not in full lifetimes. You are not asked to live the whole future tonight. You are not asked to solve every coming problem before morning. You are not asked to carry the weight of next week, next month, and next year while your body is lying in the dark. You are only asked to return to what is here, what is yours, what can be done now, and what must be released until its proper time. The overthinking mind does not like proper time. It wants everything early. It wants answers early. It wants certainty early. It wants safety early. It wants to know how every problem will end before the problem fully begins. And because it cannot get those answers, it starts carrying possibilities as if they are already facts. This is how tomorrow becomes too heavy. Not because tomorrow has arrived with its real demands, but because the mind has filled it with fear before it has had a chance to unfold. There is a difference between preparing for the future and carrying the future. Preparation is light because it gives you a clear step. Carrying is heavy because it asks you to hold what cannot yet be handled. Preparation says, set the alarm. Carrying says, what if everything goes wrong tomorrow? Preparation says, write down what needs to be done. Carrying says, you will never manage all of this. Preparation says, rest so you can think clearly. Carrying says, do not sleep until you feel certain. Preparation respects your limits. Carrying ignores them. And when you carry the future before morning, you begin to suffer from a version of life that has not become real. This is one of the mind's most painful habits. It takes tomorrow's unknowns and gives them weight. It imagines the hard conversation. It imagines the disappointment. It imagines the mistake. It imagines the pressure. It imagines the worst possible ending. Then it asks the body to respond as if all of it is happening now. The heart tightens. The stomach turns. The breathing becomes shallow. The body is forced to live inside a future that exists only as thought. The Stoic practice is to return the future to its place. Tomorrow belongs to tomorrow, not as an excuse to avoid responsibility, but as an act of wisdom. If something can be handled tonight, handle it simply. If something cannot be handled tonight, place it down. If something needs your attention in the morning, let the morning hold it. If something depends on other people, time, chance, or information you do not yet have, do not let it sit on your chest as if worry can complete it. Worry does not make tomorrow lighter. It only makes tonight heavier. This is the truth the overthinking mind resists. It believes that if it worries enough, it is helping. It believes that if it stays alert, it is preventing disaster. It believes that if it carries tomorrow before morning, tomorrow will somehow become easier. But often the opposite happens. You wake up already tired. You meet the day with less patience. You make decisions from tension. You see problems through the fog of exhaustion. You become more reactive, more sensitive, more easily overwhelmed. The future did not become easier because you carried it early. You simply arrived at it with less strength. This is why rest is a form of respect for tomorrow. When you sleep, you are not abandoning the future. You are preparing a better version of yourself to meet it. A rested mind can see what a tired mind cannot see. A rested body can carry what a tense body makes heavier. A rested heart can respond with more grace. A rested spirit can face uncertainty without turning it into disaster. The Stoics did not believe in wasting energy on what was not yet present. They believed in meeting the present with discipline. And tonight, the present is not asking you to carry the whole future. It is asking you to stop treating the future like a burden already placed in your hands. It is asking you to return to your breath, to return to your body, to return to the simple truth that this moment is smaller than your fear is making it. The future feels heavy when you try to carry it because the mind has no ground there. You can stand in the present. You can act in the present. You can breathe in the present. You can choose in the present. But when the mind runs into the future, it stands on air. There is nothing solid there yet, only images, guesses, fears, predictions, and unfinished stories. So the mind becomes unstable. It reaches for certainty and finds none. It reaches for proof and finds none. It reaches for control and finds none. Then it calls that emptiness danger. But emptiness is not always danger. Sometimes it is simply the future waiting to be written. You do not need to fill every blank space with fear. You do not need to write tomorrow's pain before tomorrow has spoken. You do not need to decide that the road ahead is impossible just because you cannot see it clearly from the darkness of tonight. Some paths only appear when you begin walking. Some strength only appears when it is needed. Some answers only arrive after rest. Some burdens are not meant to be carried in advance. So tonight, let the future become small again. Not meaningless, not ignored, just small enough to place back where it belongs. Tomorrow is one day, not your whole life. One morning, one breath, one first step, one task at a time, one conversation if it comes, one decision when it is needed, one moment after another. The mind makes the future terrifying by stacking every possible demand into one giant weight. But life does not usually arrive all at once. It arrives piece by piece, and you are allowed to meet it piece by piece. When the mind says, "How will I handle everything?" answer softly, "I am not handling everything tonight." When it says, "What if tomorrow is too much?" answer, "Tomorrow will be met with tomorrow's strength." When it says, "What if I fail?" answer, "If there is a fall, there can also be correction." When it says, "What if I do not know what to do?" answer, "Clarity often comes after rest." These answers do not force certainty. They create space. They remind the mind that it does not have to become a slave to imagined weight. They remind the body that it can stop bracing for a future that is not here. They remind the soul that life is not asking for everything at once. And maybe that is the deeper lesson tonight. The future becomes heavy when you forget that you are allowed to meet it gradually. You are allowed to not know yet. You are allowed to rest before the answer comes. You are allowed to be unfinished and still deserving of peace. You are allowed to have responsibilities without carrying them like stones through the night. You are allowed to trust that not every burden belongs in this hour. So place tomorrow down, not forever, just for tonight. Place down the conversation, place down the result, place down the pressure, place down the fear of not being enough, place down the need to know how everything will unfold. Let tomorrow remain beyond the edge of the night, waiting for its proper time. By morning, the future may still exist, but it may no longer feel like a weight crushing your chest. It may feel like something you can meet slowly, with more breath, more clarity, and more strength. And this is where the overthinking mind begins to shut off. Not because tomorrow disappeared, but because you stopped carrying tomorrow before morning had given you the strength to meet it. And after learning that the future becomes heavier when you try to carry it before morning, the next practice is learning how to end the day with dignity. Not with panic, not with self-attack, not with the mind running from one fear to another, but with a quiet inner posture that says, "I have lived this day. I have done what I could. I will not let anxiety decide how this night ends." There is a powerful sadness in ending every day as if you are on trial. The night comes, and instead of feeling release, the mind begins to review life like a judge searching for guilt. It asks what you forgot, what you failed to do, who may be upset, what tomorrow may demand, what mistake may cost you, what future may go wrong. And slowly, the day does not close peacefully. It closes with tension. It closes with fear. It closes with the feeling that you are still not safe enough to rest. But a day should not always end in fear. A day can end with honesty. A day can end with reflection. A day can end with humility. A day can end with a simple decision to begin again tomorrow. This is what Stoicism teaches. It does not ask you to pretend the day was perfect. It does not ask you to ignore what went wrong. It does not ask you to cover your pain with false peace. It asks you to meet the day clearly, learn what must be learned, and then lay it down with dignity. Dignity means you do not collapse into every anxious thought that visits at night. It means you do not let one difficult moment define the whole day. It means you do not turn one mistake into a reason to hate yourself. It means you do not treat unfinished work like proof that you are failing. It means you stand inwardly, even while lying still, and remember that your worth is not decided by the mood of your mind at midnight. Anxiety wants to end the day by taking control of the story. It says, "Today was not enough." It says, "You should have done more." It says, "You are behind." It says, "Tomorrow may break you." It says, "You cannot rest yet." Anxiety does not close the day. It keeps reopening it. It keeps pulling out scenes, conversations, tasks, fears, and regrets. It behaves like a hand that keeps turning the page backward, refusing to let the chapter end. But dignity says, this day is complete enough to release. Not perfect, not fully solved, not free from mistakes, complete enough. That phrase matters because many people wait for perfection before they allow peace. They think they must finish everything, understand everything, repair everything, and feel completely safe before the mind can rest. But life rarely gives such clean endings. Most days are unfinished in some way. Most hearts carry something unresolved. Most minds have questions that cannot be answered before sleep. The Stoic does not demand a perfect ending. The Stoic practices a wise ending. A wise ending begins with seeing the day as it was, not worse than it was, not better than it was, just honestly. Maybe you handled some things well. Maybe you lost patience. Maybe you kept going when you wanted to stop. Maybe you worried too much. Maybe you showed kindness. Maybe you avoided something hard. Maybe you took a small step that no one saw. Maybe you were simply tired and human. Dignity allows the whole truth without turning it into a weapon. This is where anxiety and dignity separate. Anxiety uses truth to frighten you. Dignity uses truth to steady you. Anxiety says, "Look at what went wrong. This proves you are not okay." Dignity says, "Look at what happened. Now learn and rest." Anxiety makes reflection feel like punishment. Dignity makes reflection feel like wisdom. Anxiety keeps score. Dignity gathers lessons. Anxiety wants you to fear tomorrow. Dignity wants you to meet tomorrow with a cleaner mind. To close the day with dignity, you must return to what belonged to you. Your choices belong to you. Your effort belonged to you. Your tone belonged to you. Your honesty belonged to you. Your patience belonged to you. Your response belonged to you. But not everything else did. Other people's moods did not fully belong to you. The outcome did not fully belong to you. The timing of life did not fully belong to you. The past could not be rewritten by you. The future could not be forced open by you. Once you see this clearly, the mind stops accusing you for not controlling what was never in your hands. This is one of the deepest Stoic freedoms. You can take responsibility without taking ownership of the whole universe. You can admit where you fell short without blaming yourself for everything. You can care deeply without carrying every result. You can prepare for tomorrow without fearing it through the night. You can be serious about your life without treating rest as something you must earn through anxiety. Dignity at night may look very quiet. It may look like taking one slow breath instead of following the next worry. It may look like saying, I did enough for today, even if the mind argues. It may look like writing down tomorrow's task instead of holding it in your chest. It may look like forgiving yourself for being tired. It may look like refusing to replay a conversation that cannot be changed. It may look like closing your eyes before everything feels completely resolved. These small choices are not small to the nervous system. Each one tells the body, the day is ending. We are safe enough to soften. Each one tells the mind, you do not have to keep fighting to prove you care. Each one tells the heart, you are allowed to rest before life is perfect. And slowly, the night becomes less like a threat and more like a return. The Stoics often reviewed the day, but they did not review it to drown in anxiety. They reviewed it to become better. There is a great difference. If you look back and find wisdom, that is reflection. If you look back and only find reasons to suffer, that is anxiety wearing the mask of growth. So tonight, if you must look back like a teacher, not an enemy. Ask, where did I act well? Where did I lose myself? What can I improve? What can I release? Then let the answer be enough. Do not keep digging after the lesson has been found. Anxiety loves digging. It believes one more thought will bring peace, one more review, one more replay, one more possible outcome. But peace rarely comes from one more anxious search. Peace comes when the mind accepts the boundary of the day. There was morning, there was afternoon, there was evening. Now there is night, and night has its own purpose. Night is not a second work day for the mind. Night is where the soul learns to place down what daylight could not finish. This is dignity, knowing when to stop. Knowing when to stop explaining yourself internally. Knowing when to stop predicting tomorrow. Knowing when to stop punishing yesterday's version of you. Knowing when to stop calling anxiety wisdom. Knowing when to stop holding your breath against a future that has not arrived. Knowing when to let the day be a day, not a verdict on your entire life. And if the day was hard, dignity matters even more. Do not end a painful day by becoming cruel to yourself. Do not let a difficult moment convince you that your whole life is wrong. Do not let one person's behavior become the final voice in your mind before sleep. Do not let one fear become the ruler of the night. Hard days need gentleness, not more punishment. They need order, not panic. They need rest, not endless mental correction. You can say to yourself, today tested me, but it did not erase me. Let that sentence settle. Today may have stretched you. It may have disappointed you. It may have shown you things you did not want to see. It may have left questions behind. But it did not take away your ability to begin again. It did not remove your character. It did not cancel your future. It did not prove that anxiety deserves the final word. The final word can be dignity. The final word can be, I will learn. The final word can be, I will rest. The final word can be, I will meet tomorrow when tomorrow comes. The final word can be, what is mine, I will carry with wisdom. What is not mine, I release for tonight. This is not weakness. This is self-command. This is the quiet power of a person who refuses to let fear decide the shape of their inner life. By morning, the mind may feel lighter because the day was closed properly, not slammed shut in avoidance, not held open by anxiety, but closed with calm respect. You saw what needed to be seen. You accepted what belonged to you. You released what did not. You allowed the night to be night. And this is how Stoicism teaches you to close the day with dignity, by refusing to let anxiety turn your life into an endless trial, and by remembering that even an unfinished person is allowed to rest with honor. And after learning how to close the day with dignity, not anxiety, one more quiet truth begins to appear. Some thoughts are not returning because they are important. They are returning because they have been fed. They have learned where the door is. They have learned that when they knock, you stop everything and listen. They have learned that if they arrive with enough fear, guilt, or urgency, they can take the whole room of your mind. This is difficult to accept, because when a thought keeps coming back, the mind assumes it must mean something deep. It says, if this thought keeps returning, maybe it is true. Maybe I need to solve it. Maybe I need to understand it. Maybe I have not thought about it enough. But not every repeated thought is a message. Sometimes it is only a habit. Sometimes it returns because the mind has practiced returning to it. Sometimes it comes back because your attention has become its food. A thought grows where attention goes. This is one of the quiet laws of the inner life. The more you return to a thought, the more familiar it becomes. The more familiar it becomes, the easier it is for the mind to find again. Soon, the thought does not need a real reason to appear. A quiet room is enough. A tired body is enough. A small delay is enough. A word, a memory, a shadow of emotion is enough. The mind touches the old path, and before you know it, you are walking there again. This is why some thoughts feel so strong at night. Not because they are true, but because they are well trained. You may have trained the mind to revisit the same worry every evening, the same regret, the same fear, the same person, the same possible ending, the same question that never gives an answer. At first, it may have felt like you were trying to understand something, but after a while, the mind began to mistake repetition for importance. It started saying, "We come here often, so this must matter." But frequency is not proof of truth. A road can be familiar and still lead nowhere. The Stoics understood that attention is a form of power. What you give your attention to begins to shape your judgment, your mood, your character, and your peace. If you give attention to fear all night, fear becomes larger. If you give attention to resentment, resentment becomes sharper. If you give attention to regret, regret becomes heavier. If you give attention to every possible disaster, the future begins to look like a place filled only with danger. But if you withdraw attention, the thought begins to weaken. Not immediately. This is important. A thought that has been fed for years may not disappear the first night you stop serving it. It may return louder. It may try harder. It may say, "Look at me, solve me, fear me, follow me." This does not mean you are failing. It means the old habit is noticing that you are no longer obeying it as quickly as before. The mind is used to certain patterns. If worry has always received your attention, worry expects attention. If guilt has always received your obedience, guilt expects obedience. If fear has always controlled the room, fear expects the throne. So when you begin to say, "Not tonight," the thought may protest. But protest is not authority. Noise is not command. Return is not truth. This is where Stoic discipline becomes simple, but not easy. You stop feeding what weakens you. You stop feeding the thought by replaying it. You stop feeding it by arguing with it. You stop feeding it by trying to prove it wrong for the 100th time. You stop feeding it by asking it to explain itself when it has no evidence. You stop feeding it by giving it your body, your breath, your sleep, your whole night. You do not need to destroy the thought. You only need to stop becoming its servant. Some thoughts return because they enjoy the attention of battle. Even when you fight them, they are still being fed. You may think, "I'm trying to get rid of this thought." But if you spend the whole night wrestling with it, the thought still owns your attention. It still decides the direction of your mind. It still controls your breathing. It still chooses the atmosphere inside you. Sometimes peace begins not when you win the fight, but when you stop entering the fight. This is why the Stoic does not chase every thought. The Stoic watches. The Stoic tests. The Stoic chooses. A thought appears, and the wise mind asks, "Does this deserve my attention?" Not, "Is this loud?" Not, "Is this familiar?" Not, "Does this scare me?" But, "Does this deserve my attention?" That question places you back in command, because attention is not unlimited. Your mind has only so much energy. Your body has only so much strength. Your heart has only so much space before it becomes tired. If you keep spending your attention on thoughts that only drain you, there will be less attention left for what heals you, less attention for breath, less attention for rest, less attention for gratitude, less attention for what is real, less attention for the quiet strength trying to grow inside you. The overthinking mind often behaves like a person knocking on many doors inside you. It knocks on the door of fear, then the door of regret, then the door of shame, then the door of tomorrow, then the door of old pain. And each time you open, it learns, this door still works. But tonight, you can begin closing some doors gently, not with hatred, not with panic, with calm authority. When the thought returns, you can say, "I know this path." That sentence matters. It reminds you that the thought is not new wisdom. It is an old route. I know where this goes. It goes into fear. It goes into tension. It goes into another hour of thinking without peace. I do not need to walk there tonight. Then return to something real. Return to the breath moving slowly. Return to the feeling of the body resting. Return to the quiet room. Return to the truth that the thought is present, but it is not in charge. Return to one simple sentence. I do not feed this now. Let that sentence become a boundary, not a punishment against the mind, but protection for your peace. Some thoughts will fade when they are no longer entertained. Others may return again and again for a while. Let them return. Their return does not require your return. A bird may fly over your head, but you do not have to build it a nest. A wave may rise on the water, but you do not have to dive under it. A cloud may pass through the sky, but the sky does not chase it. You are allowed to remain. This is the part overthinking does not want you to learn. A thought can come back without pulling you back. A fear can return without becoming your master again. A memory can appear without taking the whole night. A worry can knock without receiving a home. Every time you notice it and choose not to feed it, you weaken the old pattern. You teach the mind a new path. You show the body that not every mental visitor is an emergency. And slowly, attention begins to become clean again. Clean attention means your mind is no longer being dragged by every loud thing inside it. You can place your attention where wisdom asks, on what is within your control, on what is true, on what is present, on what restores the body, on what prepares you for tomorrow without stealing tonight. This is not passive. This is one of the strongest forms of self-command, because the world will always offer something to think about. The mind will always produce something to examine. Fear will always know how to create another possibility. Regret will always know how to bring back one more scene. But you do not have to feed everything that appears. You do not have to give your life force to every thought that knows your name. Tonight, notice the thought that keeps returning. Do not ask only, why is it here? Ask, what happens when I keep feeding it? Does it make you wiser or only more tired? Does it give you direction or only more fear? Does it lead to action or only another loop? Does it bring you closer to peace or farther away from your own body? If it brings no wisdom, no action, no truth, and no peace, then let it go hungry. Let it pass without a feast of attention. Let it speak without an audience. Let it knock without entry. Let it rise without becoming a ruler. You may feel the pull, but you can remain still. You may hear the old story, but you can choose not to sit down inside it. You may recognize the familiar worry, but familiarity does not mean loyalty is required. By morning, some thoughts may feel weaker simply because you stopped strengthening them. They may still exist, but they may no longer own the night. They may still pass through, but they may no longer control your breath. And in that quiet shift, the mind begins to understand something powerful. What you stop feeding will eventually stop growing, and what you stop giving your attention to will slowly lose the power to keep you awake. And as this night comes to a close, remember this: your mind was never meant to carry every fear, every memory, every unfinished conversation, and every possible tomorrow all at once. The noise inside you did not mean you were weak. It meant you were tired from obeying thoughts that were never meant to rule you. Tonight you learned to see the difference: real problems and mental noise, reflection and punishment, preparation and fear, responsibility and control, a passing thought and your true identity. You learned that not every worry deserves your attention, not every possibility deserves your suffering, and not every voice in the mind deserves a seat at the center of your peace. The Stoics would remind you that freedom begins in the small space between what appears in the mind and what you choose to believe. A thought may knock, but you do not have to open. A fear may rise, but you do not have to follow. A memory may return, but you do not have to live there again. Tomorrow may come, but you do not have to drag it into tonight. So let the day end here. Let the body soften. Let the breath become slower. Let the mind stop trying to solve what only time, clarity, and rest can reveal. You have carried enough for one day. You have fought enough invisible battles. You are allowed to lay the weight down. By morning, your life may not be perfect, but your mind can be quieter. Your heart can be steadier. Your body can feel less trapped by thoughts that once controlled it. And that is where the reset begins. If this message reached a place inside you that has been tired for too long, write "I choose peace" in the comments. Let that be your quiet promise to stop feeding the thoughts that steal your rest. And if you want more Stoic wisdom for a calmer mind, deeper sleep, and a stronger inner life, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Your peace is not far away. It begins tonight.